To order. First order of business is standard motions for the minutes dated April 16th. Do I have a motion to approve?
Yeah, I move that we approve the minutes from March or April 16th.
Is there a second? Second by Mr. Kovash. Any discussion, corrections, or additions to those minutes? If being none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Minutes approved. Good to see you, Mr. Colling. Thank you. Our first order of business today on our regular agenda is a comp plan amendment. And before we do that, just to re-announce that item 9, a hearing for a gravel pit special use, has been removed from the agenda. So if you're here for that and you don't want to stay, or if that's your only interest, that will not be heard today. We have a comp plan amendment. It's considered an amendment to the urban service area map of the Dickinson Comprehensive Plan. The site is approximately 282 acres and generally situated in the northwest half of Section 6, Township 139 North, Range 96 West, 5th Prime Meridian, Stark County. At this time, I'd ask our Community Development Director, Ed Curtan, to present this, please.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, with respect to the amendment that's in front of us, this is an amendment to the urban service area. As you note, as you recall, back when we were doing the comprehensive plan, the urban service area is the area depicted that the city acknowledges, or at least will try to provide urban services, sewer and water within the boundary of this area within 10 to 20 years. When we finalized our comprehensive plan, we left it at the western edge of where Dickinson Hills development is, on the west side of the city, west of the business loop and south of Interstate 94. The applicant, after the comprehensive plan was finalized, came in and met with staff. We've been meeting with them for numerous months with the idea of trying to secure the potential of getting urban services in the next several years, and then also move forward with their proposed plan unit development. They have a brochure that's that's provided for you as part of the dais. That process, the rezoning for that development and subsequent planning for that, is not on the agenda tonight. We have not spent any real time of looking at it. All we're talking about today is amending the urban service boundary, which in essence would allow them the ability, depending on when we have urban services to that area, to be able to, for the city to provide sewer and water. That's what we're talking about today. That's an amendment to the comprehensive plan because it's depicted as an area within the city limits or the incorporated area. So the applicant has submitted their plans. Before we could review it in-house, we required them to do a sewer and water analysis through the two city consultants, Apex and KLJ. That information is attached as part of the staff report, so you have that if you've had the ability to look at that. Based upon their findings, they had established that sewer and water capacity could be available whenever our final infrastructure improvements are taken care of within the next year to year and a half, depending on construction season that we're doing. To the south, we have the lift station that would provide sewer capacity. To the north, across I-94, there will be construction of a million-gallon water storage facility that will provide water capacity and pressure for developments in that general area, and also developments further to the south, which would encompass this property. So, based upon the analysis and an idea that there would be capacity within 2 years, I felt that staff could recommend an amendment to that and support an amendment to the urban service area.
Thank you, Mr. Corton. Any comments or questions at this time for Mr. Corton? I just have one, and I'd just like to say I'm glad that I believe this is following what the comprehensive plan was intended to do, and to provide an orderly growth and services to those areas that are growing. But one question, how does this affect, if any, does this affect any services to any other developments that have been planned and have not been yet completed or started? Will it impact any way who's going to get any services before someone else does? Or is it?
No, that was we've let them know from day one that, expanding upon the urban service area, we did not want the idea that if we expand the urban service area that somehow you would take away capacity, either sewer or water capacity, from areas that were already established as part of our comprehensive plan. That's why we required them to do the sewer and water analysis in order to determine that in the future, after we establish several of these infrastructure improvements, that there would be extra capacity to accommodate future growth. What I would not be in favor of is modifying or expanding the urban service area, and then for whatever reason that new property takes away capacity from a property that's further inward. That being said, when you look at the map, development is not linear in nature. There's contours. There's so many different issues with respect to capacity and availability of sewer and water. So you just can't say, well, if you expand the area on this side, then you're taking away from this property further to the east or west. That's unfair. There's differing, and I'll let maybe the city engineer talk about, but there's different ways that capacity and availability are determined for sewer and water. It's not just a linear pattern, it's a straight one that you would draw out. So, but with this amendment, it's not going to adversely impact any development that is within the urban service area. Now, it's not the intent for this. It's just to allow them the ability that, okay, urban services could be provided. And then from this point on, they need to work with the city. We would need to evaluate the project in its whole and determine when existing capacity, sewer and water, would be available. And at this point, the earliest that we would be looking at is probably 2015 or so.
Thank you. Mr. Kubas, would you like to make comment at this time?
Yeah, I would agree with Mr. Corton. Both the sewer and water capacity studies do indicate that the macro level capacity will be there. Again, in probably 2015, we have water mains, sewer mains, lift stations, and water reservoirs all being constructed this year, most of them with completion dates in 2015. I don't know that in either instance of sewer or water we have the capacity right at the doorstep, so to speak, but the macro level capacity will be there when those major CIP projects are completed for both water and sewer. The development would need to extend services off their site to connect into those trunk lines of water and sewer, but if everything goes as planned with the projects we've started now, the macro level capacity will be there. So.
Thank you.
I had a question.
Mr. Grimm.
So, I guess, was there any thought to the R3 that's included? I guess the proposed zoning, is that included in this?
That part of it is very proposed, and part of my analysis in the staff report stated that, and I've told them from day one that we do not have extra apartment capacity, the R3. I mean, they've depicted that, but I would not be in favor of that. As you are well aware, we're 20% over what we envisioned for our maximum population at 42,000 of allocation. It's not an issue of do we have enough R3 land use, it's the issue of development, able to develop within that. So they are aware that that proposal I would not be in favor of. And but that's just a general thing for you. I wouldn't get excited about the specific land use issues. Those are to be debated and to be looked at further by staff.
Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, just to clarify though, the studies that were done on water and sewer did include the zoning that was requested by the applicant, whether it was commercial, R3, R1. So the water demand and the sewer load that would be placed on the system by those zoning types, that's what was used for the capacity studies, just FYI.
Thank you. Any other comments? Questions?
Mr. Chairman,
Jackson?
you know, I understand that we're just looking at an urban service area today, and while that's seemingly pretty innocent, you know, I have to ask myself if the half section next to this was requesting inclusion in an urban service area, would we grant that too? Because it probably makes it if the same analysis was done, and I think that as these projects go forward, we need to think about that. Before we see anything else on this project, be it a rezoning request, annexation request, whatever it may be, I'd like to ask if Mr. Corton could refresh the numbers we looked at maybe last time a year ago, talking about population in the area that's already been annexed, population that can be served by what we've already included in the urban service area, that kind of thing. I think we have to continue to review those numbers and update them as the growth is occurring and all. So I would hope that before we see anything else on this project, that we can go through that exercise again.
Mr. Corton, you concur with that? Sounds like.
I think that's great. I mean, that's the idea behind, you know, doing the comprehensive plan amendments. If you recall, as part of our policies for that, is that we would have them not every month. If somebody wanted to propose an amendment, that they would be, in essence, held off and only reviewed a couple times a year. The reason for that is you could accumulate all of them and you could provide an analysis with respect to the impacts of that. So we have on the work session today to discuss some development issues. There's other ones that we need to talk about today, but I'm more than happy to discuss that if you like at the next at the June meeting, that we could talk about this in greater detail. I think that's great for us to continually do that, and that'll be part of my job is to continually update and work with the commission with respect to the comprehensive plan of how fast we're going through land uses. You know, do we need to modify residential or commercial, industrial because we're burning through that capacity? And those kind of things that I'll be working with you over the next several months to years on that. So if that's a desire, we'll just put that as a topic for us to discuss on June. I think it'd be a warranted one to do. Plus, we've also had some changes as well, and it'd be good to have a little summary of the intent and purpose of the comprehensive plan as we move forward. If I can just generally get a consensus from the commission, I think that's a great idea for us to move forward with that if you want to.
I think that there's a consensus here. Everybody would like to see that because that's the direction that if we wanted this to move when we did the comprehensive plan, is that to follow it and follow the recommendations of how it grows.
And one thing that, just for you, you know, I know you're aware of is that on Monday night we hired KLJ firm to perform the West Dickinson area plan. So this property would be included within it. Obviously, they're ahead of the plan itself. Nevertheless, that plan goes all the way to exit 56, and as part of that would be the same elements, the same analysis in many ways that we did our comprehensive plan will be included within that. You'll be part of those discussions as well, as part of the initial ones, part of the draft, and then final adoption of that. So just kind of keep that in mind.
Any other comments, questions at this time? Just for the public's information, this item is a comp plan amendment. And this is an amendment that would allow urban services and the study of urban services to continue in an area that covers approximately 282 acres, and a developer has asked for us to do this because they have some proposals. And at this time, we're not dealing with any of their proposals other than the basic, like Mr. Kuba said, the overall macro needs for water and sewer public services in this area. So the whole lot of what they're going to do is speculative and what they want to do based on what their zoning requests they're going to have in the future, and if those zoning requests are given. So this time I'd ask for a motion to recommend an amendment to approve this comp plan amendment.
Mr. President,
Mr. Coley.
since this is a comp plan amendment, you do need to take public testimony on
Okay.
it, so.
So at this time then, thank you, Mr. Coley. We'll ask if there's anyone in the public who would like to make comment on this comp plan amendment, please feel free to come to the podium and give us your opinion.
President, Commissioners, Sean Sorn, Boundary Engineering, here with the Barron's Group, and we have several representatives from that company with us today. It is a comp plan amendment, and we understand that that's what we're here for asking. The brochure that was handed out is kind of the vision of the project that's there. We understand that the land uses might change a little bit, some of the R3 that we're talking about, and we're fully willing and planning to work with the city as we develop this project forward. A couple of key features to the project that they do want to ensure is the housing element, and they're trying to come up with ways and try to work with the city on ways to try and keep or develop some housing that can be in that 200,000 or so range. You know, there's obviously challenges in trying to do that with our market, but that's one of the key features behind it. The other that you see on the front is a mall and a hotel, an iconic feature. You know, they are trying to put together a development plan for that as well, and kind of those would be the two main anchors to this project that the Barron's Group is trying to bring forward as we move forward with this. But like it was stated, what you've got is kind of the vision of the project. We understand there's no entitlements at this point to any of the zoning that's on there. We plan to bring that forward in future dates, working with Mr. Corton and Mr. Kubis and the Planning and Zoning Commission as this project comes forward. Danny Lim is here with me from the Barron's Group. I think he would like to get up and make a few comments to you as well.
Thank you, Mr. Soren.
Good morning, Mr. President, Commission, ladies and gentlemen. Looks like a big crowd. I bring greetings from Singapore, small little tiny red dot of population of about 7 million. Today we are only talking about comp plan, but I would like to give you a sneak preview of what is happening to what we have actually envisioned.
Mr. Lim, I need you to state your name and where you're from.
Oh,
And that's,
okay.
That's
I'm
for the
sorry.
record.
Okay, this
Thank
is my
you.
first time.
That's okay.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Okay, I'm Danny. Danny Lim, Group's principal of Barron's Group, or rather Barron's Vista, the one that is developing these 282 acres. Would that be fine?
That's fine.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. What we are actually talking about is bring something to the city of Dickinson. Now, I understand being a foreigner and being somebody from, we just took about 36 hours to get here. So it's just to prove to you, okay, our sincerity and our commitment to this project, and we will not leave it, you know, and just flip lands and all those things. We are not in here to do that. All right. So that's our commitment that we actually want to tell you. Now, how do we actually get about this high-rise 15-story? I mean, we'll still work with the city to decide upon exactly how high this is going to be. And why would we actually want to put in a lighthouse? And why would we want to put in a mega mall with garden inside? All right, so I'll just give you a little bit of what we have actually envisioned. Now, some time ago, in fact, last year I was in Minot, and we are actually talking about plans, and I was hearing all the great things about Bakken Formation, and I was thinking, okay, where should I actually start buying, and what should I be developing? Okay, we are developing one hotel up in Kildia for 61-room Kildia. It will be operational 1st of July. Unfortunately, due to the weather, we actually intend it to be operational in March. But that is actually being done, and it will be moving ahead. Now, I was actually talking to somebody, and he was in Denver, but he's actually now in Minot. And I was asking him how his life, and he was mentioning, oh, well, one of the main things that I miss is basically having picnics with his family. Okay, in Minot, he probably doesn't have any picnics at all. So I was actually thinking, oh, well, in Singapore, we actually have picnics 365 days a year. Singapore is known as a garden city, if you actually would just Google it out. Okay, our Minister Mentor Lee Kuan Yew has envisioned Singapore 20 years ago, or rather, more than 20 years ago, to be a garden city. And so everywhere you go, you see plants, you see trees, you see flowers, and well, any one of you who come over to Singapore, I'll host you around and you'll see what I mean. Now, what happened was, I was thinking when we actually landed on this 282 acres, the first thing I thought was, what can I bring to Dickinson? Not so much on what I'm actually going to take it out, okay, and what am I going to make out of this, okay, but what can I bring to Dickinson? Now, I always believe, okay, if God opens a door, I always should enter and give a blessing, okay, and that's what we have been doing all this time. And we thought, well, okay, why don't we actually allow the people in Dickinson to have picnic 365 days a year? Now, how are we going to do that? So we intend to do something that is indoor. And it'll be, we'll actually have sunlight lightings. Of course, we need to have glass panels, and don't worry about it. Okay, we have actually checked with a lot of architects that has actually worked in Fargo, in Williston, in Bismarck, and they said there's no problem with that. We just have to take note of the cost. So we could actually have a garden, okay, and grassland, and Dickinson is known as a prairie, right? You guys need grassland, and we actually want to spend money, okay, not renting out the second floor, the entire second floor, but part of the second floor will be used and dedicated to the public, for the people of Dickinson to be able to have picnics. Are you guys excited about it? Having picnics with your families? I mean, you see your grandchildren or your children running around and all those things, and you know, even if there is a storm outside the mall, and that's exactly what we're talking about, bring a live activity, vibrancy to the city of Dickinson, right? That's what you guys are entitled to. Your children are entitled to it. Now, the other thing about the lighthouse, okay, it's a very interesting thing because when I was actually Googling and finding out a little bit more about Dickinson, I realized that Dickinson used to have lighthouse in the very olden days where President Roosevelt was actually around. Okay, and it was actually torn down, and somebody was saying, oh, we actually should put up a lighthouse and all these things. And we are actually discussing, why don't we actually put up a hotel, okay, that could actually have a lighthouse at the top. Now, it wouldn't make sense to have a hotel that is about 4-story tall with a lighthouse, because you can't see anything. Okay, what we actually intend to do is to put a lighthouse that can be viewed from 30 miles away when people are coming in from Bismarck and people are coming in from Williston and Bellevue, okay, to be able to be drawn in by a light that actually appears out of the darkness. And that's exactly what we want to do. Okay, we want to draw people into Dickinson and make Dickinson a great city. Now, as much as I'm not a citizen of US and in Dickinson, but what I believe is when we actually move into a city to develop, we always ask what the city needs. And we would like to work with the city to see how we can actually help, okay, to make Dickinson a hub, an economic hub, because this oil boom is not going to last forever. It's going to last probably for the next 25 years. And once it's plateau, okay, you need commerce. Now, what is more important as to make a city great is to build something vertical. All right, you look at all the great cities in the world, including the great cities in New York, in Chicago, even in Singapore, Hong Kong, you see great verticals going up. The reason is because, okay, the community is actually gathered together, and people look up to something, right? And with this hotel, okay, we are actually talking about a 4-star. Of course, it's going to be a challenge because in North Dakota, I realized there isn't any 4-star hotel at all. Not in the entire North Dakota. We'll be the first, and we'll put it in Dickinson. And you guys will be proud of having a first 4-star hotel in the whole of North Dakota. Now you can actually organize massive and grand events. Of course, people are actually going to Bismarck because they wouldn't be able to come to Dickinson. They'll be going to Fargo, and of course, sometimes to Williston and Minot, but not so much in Dickinson. Okay, we are going to change that. So what we actually want to do is to put something iconic. Now, if you actually look at the brochure, you actually realize that the hotel actually spirals up. If you look at how it spirals up, okay, it's actually an inspiration from you guys, right? Because one of your mission, okay, and I love it very much, one of the reasons why I choose Dickinson is because you guys love transparency. Now, this is a very, very unique way of addressing the entire city because I've never seen anything like that happening in the East. Not in Singapore, not in Hong Kong, not in Malaysia or whatever. Okay, and you guys have a telecast. I was in my hotel watching this telecast, April the 16th, and then after that, you actually talk about Roosevelt Library. We actually intend to sponsor at least 6 to 10 acres if we need to for Roosevelt Library. That was basically just a couple of meetings that you had. Now, apart from that, if you actually look at it, it goes up. Now, Dickinson wants to grow. We need to use this hotel to signify that Dickinson is growing, so it actually spirals up. Now, the most interesting thing is, if you actually travel in from Bismarck and from Belfield and Williston, you will actually be able to notice from far a silhouette of a D that actually spirals down from the hotel. If you look at it, and it looks, it's an iconic thing that says, "Welcome to Dickinson," right? And of course, we understand that there's a Roosevelt trial that is actually moving up. What we can actually do is to put on a billboard and say, "Look to the way, look to the light." Now, we all believe nobody is drawn into darkness. Okay, and my favorite phrase is, "Jesus is the light," and so we should be drawn to the light. Now, we actually want people to be drawn in because of the lighthouse. Okay, and there must be something significant for Dickinson to be proud of, and we intend to do that. Now, the other thing that actually is deep in my heart is basically to support the people that are basically the backbone of Dickinson. And who are these people? They are basically the teachers, the nurses, the firefighters, the policemen, the civil servants. Now, I heard you guys are basically volunteers. And you can't find this kind of thing on the East because nobody sits in volunteers for a couple of hours just to listen to what people are actually saying. And I really have to salute you guys for that. Now, we want to build something that is affordable. Okay, when I actually look around and I check and, you know, people are saying, "Oh no, you can't actually buy properties for anything that is lower than $250,000. Now, I've already bought, I think, close to 1,000 single-family homes in the U.S., all over the U.S. except for California. We came into U.S. in 2009 buying distressed properties. I've bought properties from as little as $500 a piece in Detroit, all the way to about $17,000 in Florida. We are still holding on to about 700 properties, and we are still managing them. We have 3 multifamilies, 2 in Tampa and 1 in Atlanta, and we are looking to expand as well. So we are not new to U.S., but of course this is the first time we are actually developing something that is 282 acres, and we intend to make it our benchmark. So we intend to come to bless the city of Dickinson. So it would be a great thing for you guys to be able to approve this and put in the sewer and the water for us so that we can actually get on work. We can actually start work the minute you actually tell us, yes, go ahead, and we'll actually do it. Now, of course, we also intend to make sure that this is not going to be an overbuild, and after that, we'll just leave it if things goes wrong. We have other plans and contingencies on how we can actually manage the hotel, okay, and turn it to an office if we actually need to, or even put in condos. So there are plans, contingency plans for us in case oil drops below $50, right? And you'll see the whole place go bust. Okay, but we have plans for that, okay, because our money is in there, and we do not need a loan. I was actually talking to Jeff Moore yesterday. Jeff Moore, the guy from Dakota Bank, and he, I told him, oh, I'm so sorry, but I won't be doing business with you right now because we are actually self-funding, and we'll be able to fund the entire thing. But of course, as a banker, we'll still do some business with you. After we have make certain things done and we have completed, we'll come back and do some business with you. Okay, because banks only lend to people who don't need them, right? So that's what we actually intend to do. I mean, we'll come in to do business with the people in Dickinson. We'll come in and make Dickinson a prosperous city, not only for you guys, but for your children and for your future. And we want you guys to actually look into it and look at 20 years later, what is going to happen. We intend to be a catalyst, okay, to be to make Dickinson a business hub. You know, long after the oil is gone, you guys need commerce, you need businesses, and that's exactly what we intend to do. So building affordable housing are important because we intend to cater to the lower end of the group who are not oil workers, and these fellows are the ones that you actually want to attract them in. Because if they want to come in and work and they couldn't find accommodation, it's going to be a very drastic decision. And if they are not coming in, you guys are not going to grow. And so this part, we are actually taking care of it. And we'll actually continue to work with the city. We respect you guys. You guys are doing an amazing job. We respect you guys, and we'll actually listen to what you guys have to say to us, and we'll actually work with you step by step all the way in. Right? So that's what we can actually say. I appreciate this time. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commission, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you. If
Thank you,
there's any
Mr. Lim.
questions-
Thank you.
Okay.
This time I'd ask if there's anyone else in the public who would like to make comment, please feel free to come forward.
Thank you, Chairman. Commissioners, my name is Steve Isles. I'm one of the partners with Aspen Group out of Bismarck, North Dakota. My partner and broker, Matt Reichert, is the listing agent for that property out there, and he was unable to make it to this meeting because he was at a retail convention on his way back from Vegas. So he had called me and he wrote up a statement, and he just wants me to read it to you. If you have any questions or concerns, we can address it at that time. My partner Matt Reichert regrets that he is unable to attend the meeting today to address you. Aspen Group has had the pleasure of representing the Walton family on the disposition of the property. We are here this morning to speak on behalf of the Walton family and the position of the development of the land with Barron's Group. Walton's family would like to strongly encourage you to approve and assist the Barron's Group in the development of their land. Walton family spent the time up front to investigate the Barron's Group to determine if they were going to be a good steward of the property and propose a plan that was going to be iconic development that would set Dickinson apart from other communities in West North Dakota. Walton family has been part of the Dickinson community for many generations. They have sincerely desired to make sure that the Barron's Group was committed to the community and would spend the time to create a development on this very unique positioned property that Dickinson could be proud of. There are many there were many discussions early on between the Waltons and the Barron's Group, making sure that Barron's did in an overview of the community and did not present a plan just like any other land developer in the market. Waltons challenged Barron's to be unique in their approach and provide a development that Dickinson could enjoy and be proud of for generations to come. Walton family has a great deal of confidence in the development plan of Barron's Group presented to the City of Dickinson. We'd like to thank the staff, the city staff, KLG, Apex Engineering for their diligence in being creative in working with Barron's and allowing the development to be presented this morning. Thank you again in allowing the Walton family to make this brief statement. We strongly encourage you to allow the Barron's Group to proceed with development of the Walton family land.
Thank you. Thank you very much. This time I'd ask if there's anyone else in the public who'd like to make comment. Please feel free to come forward.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Robert Andrew, address 846 Adams Street, Killdeer, 58640. I'm with MAC Corporation, and we've been engaged to help with the preliminary planning for this development. But I look at it from a slightly different perspective, and I'll speak on that today. As I first drove through Dickinson several years ago, the first thing I noticed that Dickinson was a well-planned community and that your growth had been managed much more intelligently and effectively than for instance, Williston. And you've had some explosive growth here, and one of the things I see, my background is in economic development and civil engineering. One of the things I see here is some fairly good diversification in your economic base, and this development brings further diversification and further choices and options. As I chaired a visioning process for a community several years ago, one of the things we looked at that came to the forefront of the discussion was the full circle of life in a community. My father said to several of his friends when I moved away from home many, many years ago that was the worst thing that ever happened to him. And as we look at that, I've gone through visioning processes. I think one of the most important things in a growing community is the ability to have a family, educate your family, have recreational amenities in the community, have growth opportunities in the community, so the children can stay here, move up the socioeconomic ladder, and retire here and raise their families here. And it makes for a cohesive family and better quality of life. One of the targets in this development, which Mr. Lim alluded to, is the affordable housing, and that's a tough nut to crack in this economic environment up here. The construction costs are extremely expensive. We are working diligently, very diligently, to honor that commitment to provide affordable housing here, which can be starter homes for your children as they grow up and elect to stay in the community. It also is vitally important for the civil servants in this community to be able to afford housing so that they can provide the services that you need and make that affordable. So we're looking at a comprehensive mixed-use development that will provide affordable housing. It will provide recreational amenities, as Mr. Lim alluded to. It will provide additional choices in shopping. It will provide job opportunities, and it's truly a lifestyle development that brings the full slate of opportunities to the community. So I'll end it with that, and if you have any questions, we're certainly open for questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Andrews. Just I'm going to ask if there's anyone else who'd like to make comment. Please feel free to come forward. Any other comments from the commission? Being none, we'll close the public portion of this hearing, and I would ask for a motion.
Chairman,
Mr. Grimm?
I move that the City of Dickinson
Planning and Zoning Commission recommend approval of the comprehensive plan amendment to modify the urban service area boundary as depicted in Exhibit A, as meeting the requirements of the Dickinson Municipal Code and also being in the interest of the public health, safety, and welfare.
Is there a second to that motion? A second. Mr. Frederick, thank you. Any discussion? Under discussion, I'd just like to say that the comments we've heard have been addressed as something in the future, possibly, not the comp plan itself, which we're talking about now. So if anyone thinks that what you've heard and people have alluded to is definite, it's still totally speculative on developers' part, if they continue forward, and those items would be subject to approval by the city. So keep in mind that this is strictly a comp plan amendment to allow development to go forward. Any other discussion? Being none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Recommend the city to approve. Thank you very much. Item 2 on our regular agenda is the special use permit request. To consider a request for a special use permit for a convenience storage facility. The site is located north of 29th Street West. The site is zoned community commercial and is approximately 6.05 acres. This time I'd ask the party presenting, please feel free to come forward.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, my name is Chuck Hendricks. I'm from Fargo, North Dakota. I'm here with my development team. We're a family business. My dad has been involved with development, and I've been with him since the 1970s. We developed apartments primarily across North Dakota, Montana, and South Dakota. 2 of my sons are also involved in our company. My oldest son, Jake, who's a real estate attorney out of Minneapolis, and my second oldest son, Ben, is our vice president of our storage operations based out of Fargo. We also have our collaborative team effort here with Mark Swenson, our engineer. He'll speak here in a minute, as well as Steve Rude, our land surveyor. I just want to give you a quick little background. I grew up in Wyndmere. As I said, we've been in a family business of developing and managing apartments for over the last 35 years. We got involved in the storage business back, well, 10 years ago now, in 2004. Currently, we've got 6 properties in the West Fargo market, as well as the 2 additionals in the western suburbs of Minneapolis. We also own our own management company called 5 Star Services Incorporated. We pride ourselves on the professional management techniques with our apartments. We've carried that over into the storage operation and demand a clean and neat property. We adhere to strict rules, and certainly customer service is priority 1. When we started looking at the opportunity in the western North Dakota, we did our research. We ultimately loved Dickinson based on its planning. The primary thing we were looking for was our concept of an upscale storage property, which is Badlands Storage, LLC. We knew that that belonged in a unique location, such as a general or community commercial, and as close to the residential as possible, because it meets the needs of the people, our customers. We believe that that model that we've got meets those needs, and we certainly did our due diligence here in town, and we found that land in the Tweeten addition and Mr. Richard Cordy's parcel that's part of the preliminary plat this morning. Part of that proposed development and a general overview was an upscale property that had certainly fenced security systems in place with cameras, controlled access gates, extensive amount of landscaping. I learned a valuable lesson in Fargo about the importance of landscaping based on the Fargo Code of landscaping, of how important it was to the dominant influencer person in the selecting a storage facility, which is females, of how important that was. So we go to an extensive amount to put that landscaping in, which we're also doing here in our enhanced versions. It's also we're bringing in is a climate control option for the community of Dickinson. We're finding that that market is growing considerably. People have nicer things they wanted in a temperature controlled. That's going to be an option that we're including in our proposal. We'll have an on-site management office as well as the ordinance allows us to have an on-site apartment for our employee that we'll hire. We will also bring a retail store to this property where it'll service the needs of the typical mover who is transitioning either from a new home into a home. Maybe they need just the typical boxes, locks, and that type of stuff. And might even maybe even have the opportunity as a mail drop box or a UPS drop center. And so one of the things that we appreciate this opportunity to visit it is as we got feedback as to what we could do as additional enhancements. Mark Swenson will talk about those in more detail. If I may, Mr. Chair, could I approach? I've got a few renderings here I'd like to pass out. You can just send along the line. I know those were included in your packet. These are a little bit larger in color renderings. And I'll just address a few of those specific enhancements that we've done is primarily for the Highway 22 corridor overlayment, which is a little bit lower area on this particular parcel, is we are bringing in an additional fill of approximately 5 feet on that first building line, and we are raising the eave height on that building to a 10-foot 4. These engineered buildings have a variety of heights, and this one will then help prevent that screening effect for the buildings going to the west, and Mark will explain a little more about that on the cross-section elevations. We additionally added over 4,700 square feet of a product, so like a Modera brick, which we've got a sample, and or a similar type product to enhance the exterior features of each building on the corridor borders, and we even took that a little bit further back, providing it not only in a wainscot on the face fronting the 29th Street and/or Highway 22, but also on our corners, columns to break up our lines. We went back into the property a ways, as you could see. As well, we did it on 29th Street. Even though it's sort of out of the corridor overlayment, we want that area also to be as attractive, not only for our neighbors, but certainly for our customers. We know that statistically, most of our storage customers choose a facility based upon the parking lot and the initial appearance of our office. We also enhanced the decorative fence around the entire parcel of the property versus just out on the main corridors that was originally required. The only area we've got a little bit of chain link is right behind the Context building where they've got chain link existing already. We're going to tie into that of a small amount of space. It's not even going to be seen. It's behind their building. It's going to be behind our building. We also added additional landscaping everywhere. We are placing all of our buildings so that no doors face the outside property lines. So that backside, which will be obviously fenced, we're also going to landscape the backside of that for the future development to the north and west of the property, which is now known as the Richard Cordy property. As I mentioned also, there are no buildings or doors, be facing any of the property boundary lines whatsoever. We went to a lot of work to try to meet that visual appearance on the Highway 22 corridor. I think we've done that job. We hope that you guys support that as well. And what I think I'd like to do at this time is have Mark Swenson come on up, and he can talk some more about the specifics of the diagram and the engineering aspect of it. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good morning, Commissioner Abrahamson and commissioners. My name is Mark Swenson. I'm the civil engineering consultant working with Five Star Badlands Storage for development of this facility. And as he said, it's a collaborative effort. Advanced Engineering is also involved. They're doing the survey side of this. I want to go over, I won't go into quite the same detail on all the aspects unless you want me to. We did, of course, this was at a previous meeting once before, but I certainly can, and I can elaborate further. I'm not trying to avoid anything. The function of this facility is, as stated, it's an upscale convenience facility for storage, and it has a mix of about 30% of climate controlled and about 70% non-climate controlled. It has lighting and cameras. It is gated, high security with a card reader, and the net result is safety and security for the renters, and the typical clientele is female. At this 2 weeks ago, I had the opportunity to go to Fargo for graduation. I would state this is quite a bit different than the facilities you have around town. And when I went to Fargo, I didn't stay at the Motel 6, although maybe when I was in my 20s I might have. I stayed at a nice, and paid the extra and stayed at the Comfort Suites. And I would envision this to be Comfort Suites version of a storage facility. They probably don't hit the mark at being the cheapest place in town. They shoot for a high security and a much nicer facility with landscaping and a lot of special amenities. The main concern expressed at the last meeting, the feedback that I gathered was really the main thing was aesthetics from the highway. And how will this look from the highway? And the concern was that coming into town, that this wouldn't be something that the first thing you'd want to see coming into really the heart of town. Will you be able to see roofs? Will you be able to see a lot of storage doors? And at the time that question was posed, I wasn't comfortable answering that, because as a professional engineer, I don't feel, unless I definitively know, that I believed that at the time that you wouldn't be able to see, that wouldn't be the case, but I couldn't definitively answer that question. Since then, I have set grades for the finished floors throughout the facility, and I've worked with the manufacturer to get the eave heights of the buildings. So, and I realize that these are one of the comments was, yeah, these are nice renderings, and I believe they are nice looking renderings, but do they definitively tell you, can you see into the facility? So, and I don't know if this was because this was included in your packet, but I'd like to hand out, these are a little bit more of an engineering drawing. They show a couple cross sections, and if it's okay, I'd like to hand them out. Okay, what you have before you is the cross-section. There's a cross-section AA and BB. The bottom half of the drawing shows the north, and this is only on the northern portion of the facility. The facility wraps around, there's an existing building that's been characterized as industrial in nature. It's the Context Energy building. This facility wraps around that building, between the Context, and it's between the Evangelical Church. Now this portion, both of these cross sections are only for the portion that's abutting the highway. And AA is the northern of the two portions. If you look at the bottom half of the map, the darker colors is the pavement, and the lighter colors are the buildings. And on the top, you'll see a view, a cross section, as if you were This cross-section is if you were to drive down the middle of the highway, please don't do that though, and look 90 degrees to your left if you're going north, or 90 degrees to your right if you're traveling south. So I have two cross-sections, AA and BB, that would illustrate that. Now with AA and the green highlighted line on there on the top part of your drawing illustrates the view line as if you were in an SUV vehicle. And the standard height for that is basically an eye level of 5 feet above the pavement. At that vantage point on section AA, you wouldn't be able to see anything but the first building, and that's assuming a 10-foot-4 eave height, if you're looking 90 degrees into the facility. Excuse me, I'm going to grab a bit of water. I'm parched. So utilizing a 10-foot-4 eave height on the first building will block the vantage point at 90 degrees at the north end. Section BB is a little further south. At that vantage point, the first building would block the view shed, except for the very third building in. You would be able to see this about 2 feet of the sidewall. But you would not be able to see anything other than the first roof of the first building. Now, of course, if you're driving to the north, there will be a brief period once you pass the Context Energy building that you could look at a skewed angle and see into the facility. We've tried to, the cross-section drawings don't show the landscaping, but there is a cluster on the, if you look at the site drawings, if you may, there is trees that have been selectively placed to try to do the best that we can to screen that view shed. But probably as you're driving north, there might be a brief period where you could see into the facility. But again, the building, what I'm calling a second building in and the third building in, they don't have doors on their south ends, so you would see a building. As far as driving from the north, currently there is nothing built to the north of this. It's open field. So as you're coming from the north, there is the chance, you will be able to see this facility as you approach the town. And what they have done on the north side is they've added landscaping as well. So from when you're passing it, you won't be able to, in my opinion, you won't be able to see, you'll be able to see very little. There is a gap provided between the two buildings, and that was necessary for fire protection, that, there will be a brief period that you can see into the facility. So I'm not promising that we can screen, they can't put 20-foot trees in, but from my opinion, looking at this as a civil engineer, they've gone to great lengths. We talked about the owner, Chuck, brought up the fences. Along the entire north side would have the decorative fence, and this is a fence that it's tall. I believe it's 6 feet tall. It's a 6-foot tall metal fence, and it's not a chain link fence. It's a fence with gaps between. It has vertical metal, darker metal, I believe roughly 6 inches between the metal slats. It's an attractive fence. So they have done, in my opinion, gone to great lengths to try to screen and do what they can to address those concerns. And I believe they've been successful in that. I did bring along, we talked about also the architectural enhancements on the building themselves. The two buildings that are adjacent to the highway have a product, and more than likely they will use this Modera brick product, and it will be on the corners of the buildings that are adjacent to the highway. There will also be on the corners of all the exposed buildings that would be visible from the north and from that brief period on the south. So you're going to have a wraparound column to dress up the buildings on all the visible sides. And as well as if you look at the renderings, there is some intermediate, to break up the lengths of the buildings, they've added the intermediate vertical columns, not just at the corners as well. They've also added this same product onto 29th, the building that faces 29th. And this is not a change, but I would state again that there are no doors facing any of the public right-of-ways. So
Mr.
that's,
Can I just for clarification, I just want to make sure that I understand, and I think maybe it'd be the same question with the commission. The brick that you're proposing there, that's going to be the majority of the exterior facade. The wainscot will be a different color kind of brick. Is that what we're talking about? Or is that going to be the wainscot in the lower 3 to 4 feet?
the wainscot would use the same product as the vertical columns. Would it be a different color? I don't know that one. That's certainly something that could be discussed. As far as I know, this particular product, the Madera brick, comes in 3 colors. And with their color scheme that they had chosen, this one was the one that matched and was most complementary to the building color. But it doesn't have to be that. If someone has a preference for a particular color, they certainly would.
But that would be from the top down to the bottom?
Right.
Okay.
Correct. And it would use the same product for the wainscot. The wainscot is coming up, I believe, 3 feet on the side of the building as the columns. Typically, there is a capstone on the wainscot as well, and that could be a different color, or it might not. It's really up to what your preferences are. I've talked about the fence. I've talked about the landscape trees. They plan to landscape extensively. They plan to use spruce trees along the highway. In some other areas, we don't quite have the space to use a spruce tree, which can get to be a rather large tree. They're planned to use cedar trees, which is also an evergreen tree. Another issue brought up at the first meeting was, it was just brought up as a concern, fire protection. I've had some conversations with your fire chief, Robert. And we do have a utility plan. It's not in your packet. If there was concerns about utilities of some nature, we can certainly go through them. I do have currently on the utility master plan 3 hydrants, and what I've shared with the fire chief is that if there needs to be more hydrants, we'll certainly do more hydrants. If there needs to be particular issues, they will address those. I did change the site plan. One of the concerns expressed to me from the fire chief was the length of the buildings, especially on the perimeter getting around to the back side of the building. So I believe we have all of the buildings in conformance with his comments, but there will be another opportunity at this, assuming that we get an approval at the special use permit, this will go through another site plan, and if there are changes necessary to the buildings for fire code reasons or fire safety, they certainly will make them at that time.
In your plans to your people you lease and rent to, though, you're very exclusive about what can be stored.
Correct.
It's pretty much non-flammable unless it's deliberate.
Right. Absolutely. The owners, to a greater extent even than your fire chief, don't want their facilities damaged, and they don't want people storing chemicals, and it is outlined in their agreement. Will someone potentially put a can of gas in there? They hope not, and they do their best to police it. I would think that a facility of this, with a gated facility, with an on-site manager, well, I know that likelihood of someone trying to do something like that would be less likely than it would for a non-managed facility. That maybe be something you might want to consider citywide, maybe some type of ordinance that is certainly a concern. People will put things in these, especially in a non-gated, non-managed facility, will put things, you don't always know what they're going to put in them. So.
Thank
Storm drainage. Since the last meeting, we have prepared a preliminary stormwater master plan. And I would point out, and this was mainly for stormwater reasons, we did set aside 45 feet adjacent to the highway. But that 45 feet, I think, if there are concerns about aesthetics, the buildings, I would note that the buildings are 45 feet from the property line. They're not real close to the property. And from our analysis, it looks like we have sufficient space for stormwater. Traffic, we went into quite extensively at the last meeting. When I ran traffic calculations on this, we assumed the plan that you have in your site plan right now shows, I believe, 539 units. And of course, there may be, when they look at this, they may change some of the mixes of those lines in the particular buildings, and there may be more smaller units. And what I did is I took what I thought would be basically the top range, what is potential for this facility, and I used 650 units versus what is shown as 539. The industry average for trip generations is 8 trips, well, it's 6.92 trips per 100 units. And I've seen some different figures, some as high as 8 from other entities. We use 9 on this, just to be conservative, and plus talking to the owners that when you have climate-controlled storage, that those type of uses generate a little bit, produce additional traffic versus the cold storage. And what we came up with was in the 50, I believe it was 56, I have it written in the narrative, which for this type of facility this size is quite low. And I believe at the last meeting the consensus was that volume of traffic was minimal, but I certainly can go into that in further detail if you desired. Utilities, one thing that's very, very good on this is that there is no need for any public utilities. It's an infill, no big sewers, no big waters. It's within your urban service boundary. The facility will have one apartment with a small marketing place where that you can buy locks, for example, and the front desk, and that will be serviced by a 1-inch line, 1-inch water main, and a 4-inch sewer line. So not a lot of water usage and very little sewerage generated. And I probably shouldn't have closed it out with sewerage, but I'm an engineer. And if you have any questions on the technical side, I can certainly answer them.
Any questions at this time for Mr. Swenson? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
This time I'd ask if there's anyone else in the public who would like to make comment at this time for the special use permit application, please feel free to come forward.
Good morning, gentlemen. My name is Kyle Scammon. I am representing Evangelical Bible Church and Hope Christian Academy. When we were made aware that this was going to be taking place, we had some questions. Three particular questions that we had that involved security, traffic flow, and drainage. Because we are a church that has a lot of children's ministries, and we have a Christian school that's pre-K through 10th grade, so our kids are pretty important to us. So security was a big issue for that. And tied into that is traffic flow. Is it going to be one where people are going to be driving in and out all the time at all hours of the night? And because their facility will be located above us on a hill, we were concerned about drainage and where they were going to be. So we looked at the plans and we had meetings with them, and all three of these issues were more than satisfied for us. We feel that the amount of traffic flow will be minimal. The use of the fence and the key card entry and security cameras more than meets the security questions that we had, and discussing their drainage collection ponds and different things that they had for drainage more than adequately met our concerns. And we see no reason to not continue with this process, and we wholeheartedly endorse that. So, thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you for your comments. This time I'd ask if there's anyone else who would like to make comment on this special use permit application. Please feel free to come forward and let us hear your opinions. Anyone else from the commission wish to make comment at this time? Being none, we'll close the public portion of this hearing. And I would ask this time for our Community Development Director if he would like to make a recommendation.
Mr. Chairman, city staff has reviewed the updated plans. We're happy with that. We have established 3 conditions to address the apartment that would be associated with it. That's a normal part of most storage facilities around the nation. Very familiar with that. I think that's a great idea to do that. They have security there on site on a 24-hour basis. We're comfortable with the 3 conditions that we propose and would recommend approval.
Thank you, Mr. Croton. This time I'd ask for a motion.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Golash.
I move the City of Dickinson Planning and Zoning Commission recommend approval of the special use permit for convenience storage with staff's recommended conditions of approval as meeting all the requirements of the Dickinson Municipal Code and also being in the interest of the public health, safety, and welfare.
Is there a second to that motion?
A second.
Second from Mr. Jackson. Thank you. Any discussion? Being none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Recommend to approve. Thank you very much. Next item is related. We have item 3 in our preliminary plat. To consider a request for a preliminary plat for a Badlands storage subdivision. The site is north of 29th Street West and zoned community commercial. The property is approximately 3.86 acres. At this time, I'd ask for the party presenting, please come forward.
Good morning, Commissioners. Steve Rude with Advanced Engineering. I'm the land surveyor that created the preliminary plat here. And I just wanted to say 2 things about it. One is it's as you noted, the applicant of the prior agenda item needs a legal parcel on which to create his project, and that's the point of this thing. And it's a nice infill. We laid it out to be a nice infill parcel here. There was kind of a gap between the Context and the Evangelical Bible Church parcels, and this fills that up and kind of squares up the property and makes it a little more convenient for everyone. And I'll answer any questions you might have.
Any questions at this time? Mr. Kubas.
I have a question. It might not be survey related, but in the Tweeton second edition, we have this frontage road that's been platted. I know frontage roads aren't necessarily standard with modern plats today, but we'll be dead ending that frontage road where this plat would take off. Is that?
No, that frontage road dead ends on the south line of the Tweeton's Third, which is previously platted and annexed parcel. The preliminary plat in front of you today is to the west of Tweeton's Third, and it adjoins the west side of Tweeton's Third. Does that answer your question?
Yep. Thank you.
Frontage road doesn't, there is although it's one lot and one block for the subdivision that has the Context Energy building in it, the asphalt for that road does not reach all the way to this project at all. It terminates several, I'm guessing here, but several hundred feet short of this property. And the intent is not to extend, it's not on their property to extend that.
Okay.
So that frontage road there is some undeveloped land north of the Context Energy, and presumably that when that was developed, they would use that frontage road, but it's not intending to be used by this facility.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you very much. This time I'd ask if there's anyone in the public who'd like to make comment on this preliminary plat, please feel free to come forward. Any other comments from the commission? This time I'd ask for a recommendation from Mr. Corton. Close public portion of this hearing.
Mr. Chairman, city staff would recommend approval based upon the two conditions that are attached that are and also contained within the staff reports available if you have any questions.
Thank you very much. Is there a motion?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman,
Graham?
I move the City of Dickinson Planning and Zoning Commission recommend approval of the preliminary plat with staff's recommended conditions of approval. It's meeting the requirements of the Dickinson Municipal Code and also being of the interests of public health, safety, and welfare.
Is there a second to that motion? Second by Mr. Kovash. Any discussion? Being none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Recommend approval. Thank you very much. Thank you. Item 4 on our regular agenda today is a rezone petition. It's to consider a request to rezone from medium-density residential to limited commercial for a property located at the northeast corner of the 15th Street West and the Prairie Avenue, Site's approximately 1.2 acres. This time I'd ask the party presenting, please come forward.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. My name is Aaron Robinson. I reside south of New England. Lived in North Dakota for about 8 years, and I currently work for the state as a research biologist in wildlife. If you wouldn't mind, I'd like to hand out a quick packet for everyone. I guess the purpose of this project, my wife and I have lived here for several years, and we have started to put roots down permanently. My wife has been a dental hygienist for 10 years, and she's worked in Mott, Dickinson, and Hebron as we've lived here. And as we moved here, the development really hadn't started, but now we've started to see the projections of what the city is going to be in several years. And we've talked a lot about housing, even in this meeting, but one of the things that Dickinson is lacking is dental health care. The state considers Dickinson and basically all western North Dakota underserved when it comes to dental care. And my wife currently is in dental school in UNLV, and she's got about a year left, and our hope is to come back to Dickinson and start a dental practice here on this plot. That being said, we understand that in the past this lot has had some particular issues in terms of a rezone. Several years ago they tried to rezone this. As you can see from the packet that I handed out, this is a fairly small building. It's about 3,600 square feet. It's going to have 2 units initially starting out. We're going to rent one side out to help pay for the mortgage, and then the other side will be my wife's dental practice. And then the hope is, in several years, as the city grows and as the need grows, that we can eventually turn the whole building into a practice and have it just one dental office building with several dentists in it. I know that I have done everything that I can in my power to go around and talk to the neighbors and introduce personally what we're trying to do. And there is a representative here from the neighborhood that will probably get up and speak, but everyone that I talked to was all on board with this. The issues in the past was off-site parking with some of the residential proposed buildings that they had on there. We're going to have completely on-site parking, a very nice landscaped lot, and this is obviously an infill into a plot that right now doesn't look very good. It's kind of turned into a fill site and weeds, and it doesn't look good in that part of the city. And as you know, Oliver Commons is going to be across the street. So I think it will fit in very nice to that side of the, or that part of Dickinson. I've also included a preliminary plat. We have started working with Highlands Engineering to do the surveying, jumping out on a ledge that this will hopefully be rezoned. Unfortunately, our timeline is very short. The funding we have to pay for this is tied up under a 1031 exchange, and so we have a very short time in order to allocate that money for this project. So that's why we've kind of jumped ahead. I've been talking with Mr. Kraton and Mr. Kubas about this process, and they are fully aware of what we've tried to do. And actually, we're going to be ready to submit plans for a building permit next week if this is approved by the commission. That being said, if you have any questions, I'd be free to answer those.
Any questions at this time for Mr. Robinson? Mr. Robinson, if this would be approved and you would have this property rezoned, and you decided to, say your wife dropped out of dental school, what are you going to do with it?
Well, if it is rezoned as limited commercial, then we would rent it out to, talking to Mr. Kraton, it would be some sort of professional entity would rent that space. So I know one of the concerns is if it is rezoned, are we going to flip it, turn around and do something else with it? We've already invested in this building. We've invested in the architects. We've invested in the surveying. So we've already got about $40,000 into these plans. And this building's going to be put on it if it is rezoned. And then it will be put into some sort of a professional office space if we don't do that. But right now, I don't anticipate that. My wife just got her board exam results back yesterday and she passed, so we're on track.
That's good, that's good. And just trying to point out, the question is here for us is, we're talking about rezoning, and well, everybody's good intentions may not follow through. So we want to know what we're to do with this property if rezoning is really recommended, if that's the purpose of it.
Sure. And I guess just going off of what we've already done so far on this project and putting in the time and the effort with the with the engineers and the architects, this building, if it's rezoned, will be put on it. Now, who rents it would be dependent upon, if it's limited commercial, I understand that can only be professional office space. That's who we rent it to, either insurance or whatever. I mean, there could be a multiple type of office space available for professionals.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Thank you very much. This time I'd ask if there's anyone in the public who would like to make comment on this rezone petition. Please feel free to come forward.
Good morning. My name is David Wren, R-I-N-N. I live at 1579 Prairie Avenue, which is just half a block away from this property. You may recall several years ago I stood here in opposition to a apartment building going in there. I had several issues. One was garbage, one was traffic, one was parking. And you guys joined in and voted that out. They did not rezone it, and I appreciate that. This project, I'm really highly in favor of it. It does not present any of the problems that I had with the other petition, but right now that site is an eyesore. I'm not sure who owns it. I was told once the city did, but I don't know that as a fact, but no one has done any upkeep. It's a site where people are dumping cement and concrete things and pipes, and I used to walk my dog over there, but there's so much glass and stuff, I can't walk over there with the dog. It really is a bad-looking spot and does not speak highly for Dickinson. This project, I think, would really improve that spot. I don't see any objections to it, and I strongly support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rand. This time I'd ask if there's anyone else in the public who'd like to make comment on this. Please feel free to come forward. Any other comments from the commission? This time we'll close public portion of this hearing, and I'd ask our Community Development Director, Mr. Ed Cortana, to make a recommendation.
Mr. Chairman, city staff would recommend approval. We concur with the statements that have been brought forth this morning. I mean, the site has been a leftover site with development all occurring around it, and based upon that, it's subject to various issues, people dumping and trash and so forth. We've tried to address some of those issues in co-compliance, but the property's changed. We have ownerships that are all over the nation, and it's just been one of an issue of difficulty for that. We're very much in favor of that. Obviously, we need more professional services in this community. I feel that the limited commercial zoning district is very restrictive and limits it to medical and professional offices, so the impacts for the area are negligible. It's a service that we need more of, obviously, as a growing community, so we're very much in favor of that and would recommend approval.
Thank you, Mr. Cortana. At this time, I'd ask for a motion. Mr. Friedrich.
I move the City of Dickinson Planning and Zoning Commission recommend approval of the Prairie Hills Second Edition rezone from R2 to LC as depicted in Exhibit A, as meeting all the requirements of the Dickinson Municipal Code and also being in the interest of public health, safety, and welfare.
Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Jackson. Any further discussion? Being none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Recommend to approve. Thank you very much. Good luck. Item 5 on our regular agenda is a special use permit. It's to consider a request for a public utility special use permit to allow for a substation. The site is generally located in the west half of Section 36 Township 140 North, Range 96 West. The site is zoned agricultural and is approximately 5 acres. And at this time, I'd ask the party presenting, please feel free to come forward.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. My name is Leonard Hibble. I work with Rough Rider Electric Cooperative, one of 2 electric utilities with a franchise to work in the city of Dickinson. This community has grown and evolved from Pleasant Valley siding into a hectic center of commerce with oil activity called Dickinson. Dickinson has gone from gas lamps in city to city streetlights, coal stoves to central heating and air conditioning, from a city generator to central station electric power. There was a time when Dickinson State University was located on a grassy hill outside of Dickinson and affectionately referred to as Harvard on the Hill. Until my son played football there, I didn't realize that that building on the Hagen Junior High football field was actually a golf course clubhouse, or that there was even a golf course there at one time. If you follow the transmission line that circles Dickinson, imagine that transmission line and substations out on the prairie as Dickinson grew up around them. A large part of that system is a joint effort between MDU and Rough Rider Electric to provide reliable electric service to homes in Dickinson, homes and businesses in Dickinson. As you noticed in our special use permit application, the site we were able to secure is located adjacent to an existing transmission line and is in an area that corresponds with our need to coordinate our system operations and also account for future load growth. This proposed substation will be an underground substation, which means that all power lines leaving the substation will be underground, no poles. It will also be dark. There will be no security light. The shelter belts in that area are mature, and the actual transformer will be hidden from view by the existing homeowners, neighboring homes, and also traffic on the road, which is 35th Street Southwest. We have reviewed the list of requirements and agree with them. This substation is needed and is located along a transmission system that was planned to be used in this manner. At Rough Rider, we know the projects that have been approved by the commission in this area and found in visiting with area property owners, there's other developers dealing in that area. These projects approved or planned will need electrical service. Rough Rider has submitted its plan and appreciates the city's staff and time, and especially their patience and their assistance. We look forward to many more years of working with the City of Dickinson. Thank you for your consideration.
Any questions at this time for Mr. Hibble? Do you have many other choices?
In that area, it's, like I said, it's the best area we could find. We would prefer to be right up on 35th. That's our main corridor for our existing underground power lines. But it's impossible, you know, it's all bought up. So we did the next best thing was to back off, but still trying to stay as close as possible to 35th, and this is the site we were able to secure.
What was the last substation you put in?
It's called Green River Substation. It's on the north end of 4th Avenue East, and it's at the intersection of 4th Avenue East and 40th Street or 34th, depends on how you look at it.
And that worked out fine?
Yes, sir. This is the same idea. That was it's right adjacent. All we did is drop off the existing transmission line directly into the substation. We didn't have to build any additional transmission line. This is the same idea you can see from the drawings, is we just drop off that transmission line right into the substation. We don't have to build any transmission line.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Mr. Kubas.
Mr. Hibble, once this is constructed and operational, could you estimate how much traffic this would generate? Do you have a vehicle a day?
Oh, I'm sorry, yes. It'd be once it's built, it's only monthly maintenance. You know, they go in and check the batteries for the reclosers and do a general inspection. So it's the scheduled traffic is once a month.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Questions? Thank you, Mr. Hibble.
Thank you.
I have one.
Oh, Mr. Jackson.
If I could. It looks like you've already done quite a bit of work out there, and you're here this morning. Leaves us in kind of a tough position. Can you comment on that? I see you did the survey about a year ago.
Well, this project, yeah, it did start over a year ago, and we got caught in the middle of the politics changes, I guess, whatever you'd say. We bought land, found out that we needed to go to a 5-acre purchase instead of just what we needed. So we went back, got land, brought in plat, surveyed plat, and then we found out we had to have a subdivision. And at that, before going into that, you have a choice. You either have to own it or go through more paperwork to get that through the Planning and Zoning and City Commission. So we decided at that time, we were into August, September already at that point, and decided at this point it's in looking 2020, hindsight is always 2020, but we decided to wait until we actually owned it to apply for the special use permit and thought that closing would happen fairly quickly. We weren't able to close on the property until February. And so then we, at that time, then approached Mr. Josephson and began that process over. And at that time, during that time, the process had changed. We no longer needed a subdivision. And so we had done that work, and that is true. We backed off, and what you have is the plat, the survey plat in front of you. So we did do a lot of extra, bought more land than we had planned on buying.
Did you consider moving it further south?
It gets us further and further away from 35th. And yeah, that's considered. Our objective is to be as close to our corridor as possible.
Do you know, or does anybody know, maybe Mr. Kubis, Mr. Corton, there's a 40-foot strip up to 35th there, 34th, I guess it is.
Yes, 35th.
Is that a dedicated roadway? Is it a dedicated easement, or is it just a gap in the plating? Do you know what that is, Mr. Hibble?
Yes, that is the owner of the property that we purchased from, is Dr. Kim Brown and Shelley Kwan's property. We have secured an easement from them for access to our property, and also have gained the right to enhance it, just an enhanced two-track. We don't want it to be a highway. We don't want people to look at that as access to back there, because it is private property beyond us, but we want those that run horses back in that pasture to be able to have access through it. So we have an agreement with the landowners to use that and for them to use through our property.
Thank you, Mr. Hibble. Any other comments or questions? Thank you very much.
I'll be available if you have any other questions.
This time I'd ask if there's anyone in the public who would like to make comment on this special use permit application, please feel free to come forward. This time I'd ask Mr. Josephson, our AICP City County Planner, to make comment on this and give us a recommendation.
Steve Josephson, County Planner. Yes, we have, as Mr. Hibble said, we have been working with him for over a year on this particular site. They do want to put a substation there under the agricultural zoning district that is allowed as a special use, requires approval from, recommendation from Planning and Zoning Board, and then recommendation from the approval by the County Commission. Recommending approval, proposing to condition this in a similar manner to the MDU one that that the city had approved over a year ago. Limitation to that use: they can't use it for anything else, for any storage on that property. We did address on there the maintenance of the substation grounds and the roadway, and yes, I did talk to Mr. Hibble previously about that access point, and it is a private easement. Also, that the substation be galvanized, that there would be an 8-foot fence around it, and also that as part of the permitting process, they would submit a landscaping plan. We would require poplar trees and evergreen and other materials on there that would obtain at least a minimum height of 6 feet. Those are similar conditions. If they ever abandon it, they have to notify the city, and they have 6 months to they have to notify the city and restore the site. So these are the conditions that you had previously approved for the MDU site. Based upon those conditions, staff recommends approval. Just to advise the applicant, and I'm sure they know that obtaining the special use permit, they still have to go on and get their building permits, because this is in the extraterritorial zone. We would be working with Forsgren Engineering, the county's building department, during the permitting process. I know I showed this to the road supervisor, Al Heiser, for Stark County. He didn't have any objections to this. So staff recommends approval with the conditions in front of you, and I'm here to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Josephson. I have a question while you're still there from Mr. Colling. And you probably have already thought about it, but does the private easement for their somewhat private public lines have to be attached to this, and will that be of record so it shows that they have access?
Mr. President, I think on the easement, I would probably defer to Mr. Josephson. Easements work. There's no legal impediment to using an easement for this, but as to the nature of the easement and its acceptability, I would defer to Mr. Josephson.
Thank you.
In terms of its use, as long as it meets a minimum road width per the county, and of course any easement has to be filed, has to be recorded with the county recorder.
And if that's acceptable to both parties, then that's all we have to think about.
Right. Right. It's not uncommon for a private entity to use an easement like that, and given the fact that truck traffic on there is limited, and by limiting the use and limiting what they can do on the property, there's nobody there, there's no personnel there. They won't be able to use it for anything else besides the substation. So that would limit it, and they will be responsible for all maintenance on that road.
Thank you, Mr. Joseph.
Thank you.
I'd ask for a motion.
I move the City of Dickinson Planning and Zoning Commission recommend approval of the petition for special use permit for a substation, subject to the conditions listed above as meeting the requirements of the Dickinson Municipal Code and also being in the interest of public health, safety, and welfare.
Is there a second to that motion? Second by Mr. Kovash. Any discussion?
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Jackson.
A couple things. Had they not started construction out there, I'd be suggesting that they try to move 200 or 300 feet south. I don't think that'd be a big deal. So I suppose it's too late. It's really unfortunate that we're in this situation. The other thing that I'd like to see mentioned in this approval is the county road. I know that there are some concerns with the county road superintendent about what the construction has done or will do to the pavement in that road out there. So I'd like to make sure that Rough Rider works with the county on the condition of that road if there needs to be any repairs.
Mr. Josephson, you're involved in this. The comments about the road, if damages, repairs, whatever, the project, the developer, the Rough Rider Electric, will be seen too that the county superintendent of roads will be aware of that whoever should be assessed for any damages to the road.
Yes, we'll pass that on to the road superintendent to assure that the condition of this is that Rough Rider is responsible for that road, and given it's only going to serve them, and I guess they're going to allow people others to not drive over it, but use it as a horse path. But yes, they will be made aware. They will be made aware of this. So they will be made aware of this, and this is a private easement. They would not be able to ask for anything from the county anyway. So.
We're talking about
the county road.
34th. I'm talking about the east-west.
On 34th itself?
Right. Yeah.
You mean any damage that they may have? In that case, I will have them talk to as part of the permitting process, they do need to get in touch with the road superintendent for access. So they will, and I will talk to them, to the road superintendent about this. You mean assuring that any damage they do to that roadway that they'll be responsible for on 35th?
That's right.
And Mr. Grimm, would that be acceptable as part of your motion? Thank you.
Yeah, we have a standard condition that we attach on some of the county's conditional uses regarding meeting with the road superintendent to do an inspection prior to and after the project is completed in order to assess, first do an initial thing and then afterwards assess it to see any damages, and then the applicant would be responsible for that. So I can take that condition, I can take that condition and attach that to it. But it's standard for our county projects, for similar projects.
Then I would suggest, Mr. Grimm and Mr. Kovash have agreed to this, that condition will be condition number 12 as part of this motion. Any further discussion? Being none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. 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 Opposed? Motion carried. Recommend approval. Thank you, Mr. Hibble. Item 6 on our regular agenda today is a rezone petition. And Mr. Grimm at this time is going to remove himself from this discussion. He's had some involvement with this particular project. It's considered a rezone petition from general commercial to downtown commercial. The site is located at 301 West Ballard Street. The site is approximately 0.28 acres. At this time, I'd ask the party presenting, please come forward. Charlotte Halverson, Mrs. Halverson was here at one time. I don't see her right now. I think I'd like to continue on with this with presenting it, and we'll get her to, give her story here in a minute or two. I think she probably just stepped out. And if not, then we'll continue it. But at this time, to start this, I'm going to ask for a city staff recommendation. It came from Mr. Josephson, the city county planner. Would you like to make comments on this while we've got it on the agenda?
Certainly. Steve Josephson, city county planner. This piece of property is adjacent to a piece of property that the city had recently rezoned for a mixed-use project. They went from general commercial to downtown commercial because of setbacks, and also because they wanted to allow residences as part of that project. During the design phase of this, when they were looking at access and internal circulation, working with city staff, what they proposed was, in order to make the internal circulation, access and circulation work, that the building needs to be moved. I think it's about 15, 20 feet to the east. That would be onto Mrs. Halverson's property, which is zoned GC, which does have setback requirements and doesn't allow residential uses. So in order to allow for this project to go forward, they approached Mrs. Halverson about rezoning her property. So that would make that lot from there, it would make the zoning, it would make it consistent with the adjacent lot to the west. And then there is also some DC zoning across the street where the old Saks building was. So staff recommends approval with the condition that they, prior to final adoption of the rezoning, they have to make a cash payment in lieu of land to the Parks and Recreation Department. The land has already been platted, so they won't have to do that. So I'm here to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions at this time for Mr. Josephson?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mr. Berton.
The rezoning is, this is a time-sensitive issue. I'm not sure why the applicant stepped out. Nevertheless, obviously, the applicant is in favor of the petition itself. We are currently reviewing, if you've driven by, you've seen the plans for the project to the west. We're reviewing those as we speak, and the approval process is contingent upon this. So it is time sensitive. I would ask if you wouldn't mind to have some leeway to ask if there's any public comments, opposition to it. If there is not, then I would recommend that you move forward. This is a project that we want to see definitely in the downtown. We're hoping this will be an example for others to follow. So we've been really working hard with the applicant on there. So I would recommend, unless there's some opposition or questions that the commission have, that we can make a motion to continue this project forward.
Thank you, Mr. Corton. Thank you, Mr. Josephson. At this time, then, we will continue on. We believe this is a valid and sincere request. And at this time, we'd ask if there's anyone in the public who'd like to make comment on this rezone petition. Please feel free to come forward. Anyone on the commission wish to make comment? Mr. Colling, do you have anything to say about this? We're doing fine here?
I think we're doing fine.
Thank you. If there's no other comments from the commission, we'll close the public portion of this hearing, and I'd ask for a motion.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Kovash?
I move the City of Dickinson Planning and Zoning Commission recommend approval of the Charlotte Halverson rezoning petition to rezone from GC to DC as being compliant with the City of Dickinson Comprehensive Plan as meeting all the requirements of the Dickinson Municipal Code and also being in the interest of public health, safety, and welfare.
Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Second by Mr. Friedrich. Any discussion? Being none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, motion carried. Recommend approval, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Corton, thank you, Mr. Josephson. I think we're going to do 5-minute break. Right now at this time, we're going to take 5 minutes. We'll continue back at 9:05. For the public record, you're Dean Karski?
Yes, I am.
Okay, thank you.
And I'd like approval so my daughter can build a house. We went through we got everything surveyed, we got our plot plan, and we got the subdivision stuff, everything we needed. But my daughter would like to build a house on the place, and we need approval so we can build a house.
All right. Any questions or comments for Mr. Karski at this time?
I know last month you had concerns with Jay Elkins because he wasn't here. So I did visit with Jay, and he had no problem with it, being it was part of the family that was going to be building there. And I think Steve visited with him too, and he got the same thing from Jay. So.
All right. Thank you. I think that was a concern. We wanted to make sure the county was on board with this.
And I think they were concerned about if that's going to eventually grow to be bigger. Well, she's my last. Well, my son built there, and now my daughter. My other son lives in Bismarck. There's no more.
All right. Any questions or comments at this time?
Why aren't you out farming right now?
Well, I would like to be, but this is very important too.
Oh, okay.
So my daughter can start building a house.
Is
I got some in the ground.
She's on the tractor.
I got some corn in the ground and some barley, so I'll get her done.
Just a detail question. I thought we were going to a 40-foot easement.
Correct. Last month, we had requested that the 20-foot access easement that's platted on, I believe it's the east side of the property, be expanded to a 40-foot easement, just for in the potential for this, development continuing out west. In our comp plan, this is shown as a collector road, a future collector road, where we would require 80 foot of right-of-way. Right now, we're comfortable with just requiring an easement. So it was on paper being dedicated as potentially a future roadway. Right now, it would just be a private easement, but to ensure that no building would happen within that 40-foot strip of land. And it would maintain the 5-acre minimum lot size.
So when we get the final plat, it'll show a 40-foot?
That would be our hope. I think we'll make that a condition of approval to move it from preliminary to final.
Does that sound like a good idea to you, Mr. Karski?
Sounds fine with me.
All right. Any other comments or questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
This time I'd ask if there's anyone in the public who'd like to make comment on this preliminary plat, please feel free to come forward. This time I'd ask Mr. Josephson to give us his comment and recommendations.
Steve Josephson, County Planner. The recommendation is for approval of the preliminary plat. I gave the information on this last time. The final plat, the final of this, when it comes back next month, will show, will show that that easement on the eastern portion of the property. And again, as Mr. Karski said, I had conversations with Commissioner Elkin, and he was fine. He was supportive of the platting of this property.
Thank you, Mr. Josephson. Any questions at this time for Mr. Josephson? Comments? Thank you.
Thank you.
This time we'll close the public portion of this hearing, and I'd ask for a motion.
I'd move that the City of Dickinson Planning and Zoning Commission recommend preliminary approval of the minor subdivision plat for the Karski sub as depicted in the application materials. I guess with the one condition of a 40-foot easement rather than the 20-foot easement.
I'll second.
And a second by Mr. Jackson. Any discussion? If being none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Recommend approval. Thank you, Mr. Karski. Item 8 on our regular agenda is a application for a special use permit. It's to consider a request for a healthcare facility special use permit to operate a pregnancy crisis center. The site is located at 313 3rd Street West. The site is zoned high-density residential and is approximately 1.01 acre. And at this time, I'd ask the party presenting, please feel free to come forward.
Hello, gentlemen. My name is Allegra Dahl, and I am with Badlands Hope. I would like to ask permission to distribute some pictures and a little more information if possible.
That's fine, yes. You may go ahead, Ms. Dahl.
Okay. Well, currently there are pregnancy crisis centers in Minot, Bismarck, Grand Forks, and Fargo. So the entire western edge of western side of North Dakota does not have any services like what we plan to provide. And what we plan to provide is a place for women to come and men as well. And we will provide parenting classes, STD testing, pregnancy testing, ultrasound machines, not to do any type of diagnostics, but just for viewing to see to hear the heartbeat and see the unborn baby. With approximately 20 to 30 abortions occurring in North Dakota every week, we know that there is a need for services like this to provide options for adoption, education, and whatnot. We feel that this will be clearly a successful adventure. One, we have been given space to utilize an existing building that is currently vacant. So we have 1,000 square feet. We do not need to move any walls. The renovations would be mainly cosmetic. We would need to add some additional lighting for pathway and safety, exit signs, and a front sidewalk. The pictures, as you can see, show that we are on the north end of the St. Patrick's Parish Center. The building is currently owned by the Diocese of Bismarck. And in addition to being provided this space, there are a few different organizations in the United States. One of them is Heartbeat International and another one is called NIFLA. And what these agencies do is they partner with the pregnancy centers all across the United States to provide training manuals and legal assistance and help with processing the insurance. We won't be taking insurance from the patients, but as far as insuring our facility, they will help with that. So how it all came to pass is I'm a member also of the Badlands Right to Life, and we always saw the need and we had the desire to open a pregnancy center, and as did another group of individuals, a large group of nurses and doctors. So we pooled our resources, and that's why we're here today. And the reason we need a special use permit is because we want to be able to do the pregnancy testing, the ultrasound machines, and the STD testings. And to do that, we'll have to have a nurse come in to administer those. And so we have to be designated as a healthcare facility for that reason. And that's all I have. I'm available for questions.
Any questions at this time for Mrs. Dahl?
I had a question. So what's you said there's 1,000 square feet. What's the plan for is there a remodel plan or because it's a change of use?
Right, the remodel plan, we don't, like I said, we're not going to knock down any walls. And so it's basically set up quite nicely. There will be a reception area, and then, and it's 2 floors. So we will be able to separate individuals for privacy purposes. But basically, new flooring, paint, furnishings. That's pretty much the extent of it.
Thanks.
Any other comments or questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.
This time I'd ask if there's anyone in the public or anyone else who would like to make comment on this special use permit application. Please feel free to come forward. This time I'd ask Mr. Josephson, the city county planner, who's involved in this, please give us a comments and recommendation.
Sure, Steve Josephson, city planner. This is a request for a special use permit for the kind of use that they are requesting in the R3 zoning. It does require a special use permit. Their group has been working with our building department on for a while in terms of remodeling it, and when they found out that instead of just doing counseling services, they needed to, they were going to have medical personnel working there too. That kicked in for the special use permit. Staff recommends approval subject to conditions. The conditions are not very detailed, just that they're going to they're going to use existing parking on the site and just an outline of business hours. It's not required, they're just typical, and also allows for them to use it after hours. So staff recommends approval subject to conditions.
Thank you, Mr. Josephson. Any comments or questions for Mr. Josephson now?
So if they need to expand past 1,000 square feet, they'd have to come back in again?
They'd have to come back, but that's the footprint of the area that they told us was going to be made available to them. So that's, that's my understanding is with them working with the church, that was the space that the church was going to allocate to them.
Any other comments, questions?
Mr. Chairman, maybe
Mr.
we
Jack.
could ask, is there any chance that you would expand beyond the 1,000 feet?
No.
Maybe not in this location, at least.
Again, this is Allegra Dahl. Basically, the building is rectangular shaped, and we will occupy the north end. It is 2 stories. So this way further, there is a large lunchroom, and then the parish offices. That's on the main floor. Upstairs, it's just a series of rooms, including a large bathroom. So we will utilize the area directly above the main floor, as I described. And to go further, there are more rooms available, but they're currently utilized as storage for the church. So at the 1,000 square feet, we have several rooms that we will only use for storage. So if we need to expand, there's room to expand. So it is more than enough space. Any other questions? Do I
Thank
need
you
to
very much.
describe the layout a little better?
No.
Okay.
That's pretty much up to the people that regulate the facilities and license facilities. This is just for the use of that particular facility for this purpose. That's a special use permit.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. President, with respect to the expansion side of that, I mean, if it was a little over that, I'm not going to be terribly concerned. You know, the intensity of it, as long as it stays the same and the footprint expands a little bit more, I would be comfortable, and I've done this in the past, where you just expand the condition and say that, you know, any future expansion of the footprint the community development director shall determine if an amendment to this will be warranted. You could tag that onto it. As long as the use is the same, they're not changing anything to that, the expansion's not causing any major shift in fire or building code, then I would have the administrative ability to grant that. So if that's your question, I would feel very comfortable adding that language.
I think
Yeah.
that's my thing, if we're gonna issue a
Sure.
special use permit, we might as well issue it for the whole thing, or, give them opportunity to expand without having to come back through, so.
Right, what we can do with that first condition is we can just remove the word limited, and we could say it shall be approximately, approximately 1,000 square feet. Will that work for you?
I think it'll work. I mean, we've heard, if the door is open, go through it this morning.
Okay, so that's what I would propose to change it, and I think that'll
Okay.
give you the flexibility.
Yep.
Again, if they were to go like 110, we're not going
Yeah.
to do anything about that, but say they need another 100 feet, this puts them in the ballpark.
Yep. Any other comments or questions? Being none, we'll close the public portion of this hearing, and I'd ask for a motion.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mr. Frederick.
I move that the City of Dickinson Planning and Zoning Commission recommend approval of the petition for a special use permit for a crisis pregnancy center, subject to the conditions listed, as meeting all the requirements of the Dickinson Municipal Code and also being in the interest of public health, safety, and welfare.
Is there a second to that motion?
A second.
Any further discussion?
Do you want to mention the conditions as amended in the motion?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, have that in the motion. Thank you. That's fine with you, Mr. Frederick?
Yes.
Yes. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Motion carried. Recommend approval. Thank you very much. Item 9A on our agenda is we need to nominate and elect a vice chairperson. Anyone wish to put themselves forward here?
I would nominate Scott Kovash.
Scott Kovash? Nomination for Scott Kovash. Is there a second to that? Is there any other further nominations?
I'd nominate Gene.
Person has to be willing to serve. Any, was that, you sincere about that? Yeah. Okay. Any further nominations for this chairperson, vice chairperson? Okay. All right, we'll go with, we'll go in order of nominations. Is there a motion to cease nominations? No further nominations. This time we'll ask, who would like to see Mr. Kovash?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, Mr. Kovash. I heard 3 ayes. Thank you for your willingness. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second? Second. All those in favor? Aye. Meeting adjourned. We will now have a work session, or not.
It's your call. There's a couple of issues that we've been dealing with developers.
Okay.
With respect to property. We had talked about these in the past, and I just wanted to bring them forward and see if there's any interest with respect to the commission. This is not mandatory for you to stay, but it would be great if you could. We'll try to limit it and be as brief as we can with that. So, if you want to do that, if you want to get another cup of coffee before we, or just move right in.
Can we talk about signs a little bit, too?
Sure, let's do that afterwards, after I leave.
Yeah, why don't we just, you need more coffee?
Do we want to, everybody get some coffee real quick and we could start on that, or just go right into it?
Let's go into it, and such a nice day.
Such a nice day? Absolutely. Okay, the first item we have under development issues, I've been approached by several developers, I won't mention their names. One, and the issue out there is, you know, the cost of developing land. We're all aware of the cost of especially residential single-family lots. When you add in the cost, the initial cost of buying the property, the infrastructure costs, sewer, water, roads, and other associated costs with that, it gets to be very cost prohibitive, at least in today's environment. So some of the developers have come in and spoke to both Craig and I about the possibility of amending the zoning code, or at least address the issue of smaller lots in order to have more lots. We talked about this issue when we were going through our comprehensive plan, and we said, you know, is there, you know, on PUDs where we could reduce the lot size from 7,000 or square feet down to 6 or 5, either keeping the same density for that or just outright reducing the lots. Would you be comfortable with that? And at that time, you had spoke about it, well, our standard has been for decades that we have, you know, lot sizes of that nature. Well, the environment's changing. We're having more and more people coming here from outside the area, myself included, that I'm familiar with and comfortable with lot sizes that are smaller than our minimum lot size we have for a residential single-family district. There are people that don't want to have a big front yard or backyard. So my question is there at all a desire to entertain that? And maybe the best way to entertain it initially would be through a planned unit development where we could condition it. We could require renderings of the building so that we know that we're just not reducing the lot size so the developer gets more lots, but at least we know what they're going to build, so we don't get something that's perceived as a substandard development, or at least a marginal development. You know, we could address it that way. There's many issues, there's many ways to address it. We could require, if we did have smaller lot sizes, that they would be in the interior, and the exterior abutting existing residential properties would be comparable to that, but that would allow some flexibility with developers. But I just want to bring up the idea and see if there's at all a desire to look into it. I could provide examples, and we could debate that and discuss that issue more at length. But so I'd like to get some questions from from you as well, and see if there's a desire for that to go from there. I'll open it up.
I'd like to, I would think would be great, along with, in some PUDs, you wouldn't even have to have curb and gutter, and mandatory recycling, and some quality issues built into those properties that are built on those smaller lots. If it's possible. I mean, there's some things that I think the city should be looking forward to 40, 50 years from now. I mean, what are we going to do all of a sudden that, you know, we want to recycle? Or why do we have curb and gutter and other places don't? They get just as much snow or rain and whatever. I mean, an engineer, I guess I'd have to ask him, what is it, drainage? So what do we want the water to run off so fast for? You know, I mean, is it the attitudes of people? They can drive up on the lawn then if there's no curb, or what's the reasoning behind some of these things? I think it's, you know, it's a good thing to think about, especially in a PUD where you could control it, develop it, and there's people that don't want those huge. If you ever watch these TV programs where they're redoing properties, and my God, they're selling these little townhouses for $1 million, and they've got a, you know, like a backyard that's 500 square feet, and they're happy. And there's people that want that. They're satisfied with it. So I think it's worth looking at.
Well, I think part of the reason we're not seeing a lot of R1 being developed right now is it's cost prohibitive.
Oh yeah.
I mean, you're talking, you know, a little subdivision we've been working on. I mean, our infrastructure cost without land is $40,000 a lot. So you had land in there. I mean, you're talking $65,000, $70,000 lots for 7,500 square feet.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, like I compare my experience to like in Billings, and like an R1 lot was typically around 75,000, and this was back in 2005 or so. Like they were ranging between 60 and 75,000 bucks for an R1 lot, and their minimum lot size is 9,600 square feet. Where our R1 here is 7,000. One of the, I guess one of the things that they did, like in 2007, is they did a smaller lot size that was designated as a single, so you could rezone it, but it was called like R7000, which would permit single family, in that case, permit single family housing on a 7,000 square foot, where typically R1 was a 9,600 square foot lot. I mean, to me, it seemed like that would be, if it was agreeable to say a 5,000 or 6,000 square foot lot was an agreeable single family size, that seemed like something that was workable, and then you would allow that as a single family use. It seems like a small lot to me.
I expect you probably had a real different market in Billings than we do in Dickinson, just like Fargo has a different market than we do in Dickinson. I think we really need to try to find a way to make it easier to do some R1 development. I keep scratching my head about that. I don't know for sure how to do it. But I also think we need to resist quick fixes. I guess what I might call a quick fix. We went through a big discussion a year or two ago about street widths, and there's no question if we went to narrower street widths, it'd make it easier for a developer to do R1 or any kind of development as far as that goes. And it's happening other places in the country. There's plenty of places that are doing narrower streets. But I just think we need to resist those things as much as we can. We're going to go through what for most cities is 25 years of growth in 10 years. And I don't know, I think we need to hang in there. As far as smaller lot sizes, I think that's worth exploring. Mm-hmm. I would like to see, if we do that, probably see some kind of limitation. In other words, if there's a 100-lot subdivision, maybe allow 30% or X percent, or some percent. That could be a smaller lot.
There was a development proposed 3 or 4 years ago on the south side, approximately 22 acres. That was, the guys went through a lot of work of drawing up all kinds of nice drawings, and never came to fruition.
Talk about that Hulsing project.
Yeah, and those were fairly small lot sizes, I believe. But I don't know if they went below our standards at that time, but it was really laid out where you fit a lot of properties in there.
This oil boom and the economy comes with it is going to mature. We're going through a lot of pain right now, waiting for it to mature. But as it matures, some of this stuff will take care of itself.
Yeah.
It's just the pain of getting through it.
I just wanted to interject. I've worked in an area that was going through a boom where in suburban areas, 5,000 and 6,000 square foot lots were considered a standard. And as Mr. Corton was talking about land values and availability of land and how it drives up the cost of doing more single family homes. I think 5,000 and 6,000 square foot lots are manageable. I lived in a lot that was smaller than that. We had a house on it. I think it's manageable. I think it's more efficient in terms of infrastructure, and it's going to provide people with an opportunity to buy, and invest in the community and not put so much pressure on the need to constantly expand the city. You can use some infill areas now and try and do something, some smaller lots in there. And it's, I think 5,000 is a reasonable size.
I think
for a
that
lot.
if you go to that size, I really do. There's got to be some quality built into those places that keep people there that are desirable, and they're going to stay full. They're going to use them. They're not going to want to just use it for a quick fix. Somehow there's got to be some type of quality built into those projects, those PUDs that, guess what? I mean, is there any way to do that? Can you say, these have to be built out of this type of material? And with these standards of noise and whatever, that people are going to be desirable, say a couple or a retired person, whatever, not large families that are going to want them, because they're not going to be able to park 3 cars and a motor home and whatever else there. And then these places have to be connected by our planned park and rec trail system, so these people can get to those amenities real easily. But there's got to be some kind of quality built into this issue, so those places don't just become a quick fix and then pretty soon they're abandoned because that person wanted to go to a bigger home.
We had one very large area in the 70s and 80s that developed as FMHA housing. It was minimum lot sizes, very, very small lots. And, you know, you need to be careful saying this, I suppose, but it's not a neighborhood that I think we're all proud of today.
Yeah.
You increase those densities, and you have to think about what it does with sewer and water and surface water runoff and those kinds of things too.
I think the biggest issue with that is you got to determine how you're going to deal with the parking situation. I mean, if you do that, that doesn't mean, I think it's only fair if you're going to do that. If you're going to narrow the lots down, then you require 2-car garages to address the parking issue, not 1-car garage. 1-car garage don't work in this city.
No. This culture here is vehicles and vehicles and vehicles.
Absolutely, absolutely. And maybe you require additional, with the amount of bigger vehicles we do have, maybe a little portion per every smaller lot that you have a community little parking area for, some additional parking for that to happen. But, you got to be, if you require, to address one situation, if you require some other things to do that, then you've kind of de-incentivized the reducing of the lot. So it's a balancing act, but that's why I mentioned that we talk about if that's something you wanted to entertain, that we would require the developer to come in with renderings, with tentative building plans before as part of the approval, so at least you know what the bare minimums would be. And I think that's very fair to ask. I'll ask Jason. I mean, if you're a developer, you're coming in with that, you should have a general idea what you're going to build and so forth. And I think that's only fair because the last thing we want to do is to condense development that is not complementary for our community.
As a builder and developer, I don't really like smaller lots. I mean, my smallest house is 48 feet wide that I built, and it's 1,100 square feet. I mean, so squeezing that onto a 50-foot lot obviously isn't going to work. So you'd have to come up with some kind of different house plan. I mean, this market won't bear any single-stall garage. I mean, I would never build one with a single-stall garage. I don't think it would ever sell. So, I mean, doubles nowadays are becoming almost a thing of the past. So, most people want triples. So it's just a way maybe to get some people out of apartments and invest in Dickinson and get them into the house, get the lot prices down. I mean, you can't build an affordable house on a $70,000 lot. And it's impossible in this atmosphere. So if you want something under $300,000, you got to get the lots down to $35,000, $40,000.
Other communities, Fargo, West Fargo, I know, special assess everything in a residential development. And I would never be for that. We've got such a different situation here with the potential for boom and bust with this oil cycle. I think there's less potential right now than there was 30 years ago, but there's still potential for that. But obviously that makes things a lot easier for a developer in Fargo when they can special assess all that infrastructure. I think we got to try to be creative along that line somehow and figure out a way to grease the skids a little bit. Just for R1. I don't think we need to do it for anything else.
Special assessment is not pretty common now. I mean, a lot of cities are just doing
in other communities, me? No.
No, we get
There's
rid of
none.
that. Yeah, we get rid of it because we, as you're familiar with the CIP program, we have 100 million plus that we're putting in infrastructure. And if you set aside $8 to $10 million, that can go, we needed it for infrastructure to continue the development, let alone try to do that to reduce the cost on a private project. And we don't have that luxury of letting it take 5 to 10 years to recoup that money in order for us to reinvest that in. So that's the direction that the commission did. Which brings us to our second subject, if you want to talk about that.
Okay.
This is not directly related to the Planning Commission, but it's something that we had a developer propose that. I don't know if this is the applicable one, but I'll just bring it up. We're talking about specials. Normally the specials are done where the city is the one that has the liability, the city's the one that fronts up the money. But maybe there's an option where the developer does that, and then the city in essence becomes not a pass-through, but the city becomes the administrator of that, assesses the people, collects the money with a nominal fee to pay for those charges. And then if the development either goes belly up or it's slower for that, the city's is not holding the note and incurs the liability, the developer does. Now, based upon that, the property, let's say an example where you have a half road, you have a developer wants to put in a road and wants to put in that road and with many lots, across the street is undeveloped property or a house or two on there. There's different ways of looking at it. If you special it, the special would come in for all the lots within the subdivision, but the guy across the street may only have 1 or 2 lots, and then he's assessed half the value for that. The question comes about, well, should that property have to pay such an enormous amount for that? Or should you make it so that, okay, if we do it that way, the developer holds it and the property owner has a couple of years to at least address the issue? Or if they decide to plat or sell the property, then it would be assessed their value. It's kind of a fair way of looking at it. That's just options out there. But I was just wondering if you had any opinions with respect to that. We're looking at that in-house, and we're just trying to think about it, and I just wondered if anybody had any opinions, if that's a good way of going. Legally, we have to look at that as well to see if that's possible. Is there enabling legislation to let us do that, where a developer would upfront the money, the city would be the administrator of that, and assess the people and collect the taxes that way? Personally, I feel that's a good way of doing it. That's another alternative for these developers to move forward. Of course, the contingency on it is that does the developer have that money, that liquidity to upfront the money and be able to wait several years in order to get back their money, but over a period of time, it's an investment to them because they would be getting interest upon that. So just wanted to see if there's if you have any questions for that. We're looking at that in-house. I would also ask Craig if he has any thoughts to bring that up for you as well. So.
I think it's a good way of looking at it. If down the road there's a subdivision on properties that have no benefit for a developer to put a road in, the developer should not, place a burden on other property owners that they didn't ask for or want or are going to benefit from. If the developer is looking for a financial reward, then they have to take the burden. They shouldn't ask someone else to pay for something that they're going to profit from, and that property owner is not. But if the property owner, like say further on down the road, subdivides it, and it's developed and it's a benefit to the new owners, yeah, maybe then they should be special assessed or something assessed later on. Yeah, let the city be the go-through for all this. But the developer, it's just, to me, it's pretty black and white. If a developer is going to have if it's for their benefit and it places a burden on someone else, that burden should be lifted from the other people in some other way. Whether the city, the county, the developer has to carry that burden, not someone else totally uninvolved not something this incidentally just fell on you. Now you gotta, you know, do this. But, yeah, that's,
The problem with that is the developer will take that portion of land that's adjacent to that and won't develop it. I mean, and you'll have unfinished roads everywhere. You got that in Fisher's East Side right now. They developed the front lots and never got finished.
well, you know, we did, 2 years ago, there was in the ETZ, there was a property south of town. The guy was gonna put in so many lots, but the road needed to be improved for at least a good half mile, maybe more. And who's gonna pay for that road to get that half mile or 3/4 mile, whatever it was? The developer was going, the county said, you're gonna pay for this road because this is for your benefit, not anybody that's owns property along that road right now. So if you wanna do this development, then you get the road taken care of from here to there. I mean, it's as simple as that. If I want to go develop a mile north of town, and I'm sitting out there all alone, and I'm saying, okay, I need a nice road here, so everybody along this road is going to pay for my road to get to my development, then I'm going to make a ton of money on. That's not fair to put a burden on those people that are just living out there saying, hey, I don't need this. I don't want it. It's not going to benefit me any. Why should I be burdened with this? It's not fair. And I think, I don't know, I'm sure you mentioned there's a legal problem. And Mr. Coling, is there a legal problem there?
Well, I think one of the issues is that, you know, assuming a road goes in, developers on one side and there's agricultural ground or some other use on the other side of the road, that other owner still receives a benefit of that road. You know, if the road goes in, that other owner can now develop that property and essentially gets a free road that he doesn't pay for. He may not currently use that property for residential or some other development, but the value of that property has gone up just because it now has services there that it didn't before. So when we would look at it as a special assessment district, you have to put assessments out to the benefited properties, and I don't know if there's a way that you could call that other agricultural property a not benefited property. I think it is benefited, even if they may not be able to capture the benefit immediately.
What we had discussed with some, with staff and with some developers that had come in is saying, okay, one, like you had said, Ed, if you develop it next year, at the initial time the road went in, you said, I don't want it, I don't need it. A year later, here's a plat coming forward. Well, then your assessments would kick in. Mm-hmm. The other scenario would be, in year one, they say they don't want it, they don't need it, and 5 years later, they still haven't developed their property. Do we put some window saying, you know, we understand this wasn't done, it wasn't put in at your request, but in 5 years, the property is going to be special. Those are the discussions we've had. Is there going to be some sunset on it, saying if we put a grace period on the specials being assessed, do they kick in 5 years, in 10 years? Never, only when it's developed? Those are kind of the issues that we'd been discussing as staff, saying if it develops, if the secondary property develops, then it's fairly clear that the specials would kick in then. What if it doesn't develop in 5 years? Then
these are really tough ones, and
yeah,
can be really tough ones.
Sure.
I think one of the things we maybe need to do a little bit more is there's nothing that says that a main arterial has to straddle a property line. And now in the case of a section line or something, you're probably not going to change that. But there's probably some cases when they're laying out a subdivision that arterial could be moved over so that the developer does own both sides of that street. Mm-hmm. And we need to look for those opportunities.
And Gene, I think that is happening around town now with like 15th Street. You know, right now it's on the section line in between two developers, and it looks like as that road continues to go west, they are going to jog that down so that the one developer has both the north and the south side of that road.
Solves some problems.
And it solves some problems. It creates some traffic issues with jogging the road, but it gets the road built.
It can be done right, though.
Yeah.
Get it
So-
done right.
And we've talked about that as well, and it goes back, you know, manageable sized developments don't have as much flexibility moving interior, or a road that would be an exterior road to an interior road. But smaller lot sizes would help out with some of that flexibility as well. You know, juggling 100 smaller lots is a lot easier than 50 larger lots.
As far as the, you know, I think we kind of get off the issue that Ed brought forth as far as some different arrangement with specials. I think that's really something to explore. You know, to me, it's just another, I know Tom and Craig probably know that there's a lot of civil engineering projects in the last 10, 15 years nationally that this public-private partnership thing is a big deal, whether it's a water treatment plant or a toll highway or whatever it may be. To me, that's just another twist on this public-private partnership thing.
Sure.
And there may be legal impediments, I don't know, but if there's not, I think it's kind of interesting.
I'm like in favor of special assessments. I think just about everything should be special assessed. But then if you get along a property that, say the person, I'm not gonna do anything with it, but then they get assessed for it or special assessed down the road in so many years, that's gonna force them to, okay, what am I gonna do? I gotta sell some of this now to pay for this. So it drives up the price of that property also. And if they subdivide it, and there you got more increased. I mean, there's no way to get around, especially in our market, this unique market. Everything that seems to drive up the price of a lot is happening, no matter what it is. It's happening. The cost of labor, the fact that it's a seller's market, I mean, it's just all the new infrastructure that the cities has to put in, you know, for the growth, everything that can happen to increase prices of lots is happening. But any way to take the immediate burden off of someone with the partnering and doing assessments, I mean, it's gotta help.
I just don't think anybody that's inside the city limits can sit there and make the argument that I never thought this would get developed, so why should I be responsible for this road going by my house?
Yeah, inside our urban bound, I'd say yeah. But then when you get on the edges of, okay,
Well, yeah, if you're a mile north out of town in the county, yeah, maybe there you can make that argument because we're not there yet. But I mean, if you have 30 acres inside the city of Dickinson, how do you make the argument that I never thought this was going to get developed? I mean,
Yeah,
it's impossible.
Yeah, that's right. That's potential's always there if you're
It
inside the
happened
city.
When we did Washington Fourth, that had been platted for years. We bought it, and we had people coming in here when we tried to do some replatting and stuff, saying, you know, we drive our four-wheelers back there. We never thought anybody'd ever develop that. Well, I mean, that's not a good argument. It's inside the city. I mean, it's been platted already, so.
You know, when you think about it, the significant R1 development that we've had in the last 5, 6, 7 years, most of it has been on lots that the city owned and got sold at bargain basement prices.
Well, yeah,
So
that
those were
25
able to
acres we
be.
bought from the city, I mean, that was city-owned property.
You feel bad about that now?
Very.
I
didn't see that.
Well, the state
Yeah.
edition.
Goes around,
Look
comes
at
around.
the state edition. That was all.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you think about what everybody bought the property for
Yeah,
out there.
state edition was another one.
Yeah.
I
That was
remember when
good.
we did the state second edition, you know, when we were selling lots for 25,000 then, at that time, I don't remember what year that was, 05 maybe or something, and we had $7,500 in specials, and I mean, people almost keeled over.
The market's gonna
And the-
change someday so that we can sell $60,000 lots in Dickinson.
Sure.
It's just today, we don't have that kind of market.
Yeah, it's not unheard of in the state, $60,000 lots, it's just.
I'm in favor of the
Yeah.
Well, from staff's perspective, I mean, I'm not going to speak for Craig, and he could speak for himself. I think Craig and I are in agreement to entertain that, to move forward, you know, to allow developer two that's proposed that to kind of come forward and for us to look at it. And then from there, probably, you know, as long as, and I think generally you're open to the idea, probably to bring it to city commission and see if they're interested in it before it moves forward. I mean, if obviously the city commission's not receptive to it, then what's the point? You know, that kind of an issue. This is a change. It's a change in how we would finance and do it. But I think it's a good way. We got to try different measures to bring forth the single-family development that we need. I mean, that's the biggest one that we do have right now, is trying to get single-family. Obviously, we have the entitlements for apartments. We just need those guys to develop as well. And we will force that hand. We had talked about that probably in about 6 months or a year, whenever we get caught up reasonably in our infrastructure and we know that's going to be completed. Then I'll come back to you and the city commission and say, do we want to notify those people and say, you've had several years to develop, give you 6 months to develop, otherwise we're going to downzone your property and move those projects forward. And if they don't develop, then give it to somebody else that can. I think that's only fair. If we're going to constrain the market, then we need to administer that as well. So, you know, we need single family, and I think that's a good way of doing it. I would like to just go back and touch on the first subject with respect to smaller lots. Are you open to the idea? I mean, because I need to have a general idea. I could propose something, and a developer works with me for maybe months on end, spends money. Obviously, that's part of the whole process. But I want to be able to give them as, you know, reasonably accurate information. I mean, I have my preferences. I feel comfortable with it. I've planned in various jurisdictions. I know it could be done right. There's a, you know, it's basically up to the property owner and the developer to decide, you know, the future property owner. Do they want to have a lot? If they want to have more yard, obviously they wouldn't be interested. But as people grow older, obviously we want to have, we want to have seniors in our community, people, you know, the empty net syndrome and the rest, where people just, hey, I don't want to take care of my front yard, my backyard. I'd like to have smaller lots. You know, they gravitate towards that. Young urban professionals that will slowly get in our community, they're not so interested in, you know, the demographics and trends show in more urban areas that they're not interested in your typical lots. They would like smaller ones. They like, and so, you know, obviously the market forces will dictate what the development is, but I would like to get a general idea. If you're open to that idea, I could work with the developer and we could propose that, and obviously you make the final decision with respect to that. But a year or so ago, you were adamantly against that. Are you at all open to the idea? If it is, I could continue to work with some developers and we could bring it forward and let you ultimately provide a recommendation.
I'm for it, as long as there's a potential of somehow in a PUD you write the quality issue in there. If that's at all possible. I mean, it's like, say, this PUD, to ensure the quality and the livability of these places, that it's going to be a fine place to be. Now, I'm kind of familiar with these because when we lived in Maryland, and our one son stayed there, he had they used to be row houses, then they got up, they called them townhouses because the price went up $200,000-300,000. But those places were extremely good quality, brick structures, and quiet, and everybody was happy. I mean, they were desirable places to live. You could walk a couple blocks, get on the ferry, and go to the Inner Harbor. I mean, it was a nice place to be. It was convenient, it was livable, and the people that lived there, it was a great community, those areas of town that had those. And I mean, I can see myself living in something like that if the quality is built in. That you know you have a nice neighborhood, the structure's sound, and you don't have a lot of noise and the other things you like to have.
As staff, we've also seen proposals on, I guess they call them different things, but pod housing. I think it would still fall into R1 where 4 lots share a single driveway that accesses a public street. Those 4 houses on the lots probably face towards each other in their own pod. Almost a cul-de-sac type thing, but this is only maybe 50 feet of driveway to the center of those 4 lots, and you'd get some density out of it. Smaller houses, but probably 5,000, 5,500 square foot lots again. And I don't know if that would still fall under our R1 zoning if they're a separate house on a separate lot. So
it can be. We can make adjustments with respect to it, and that's why PUD would be the portion to allow some flexibility with respect to it. We could do it as a permitted one down the road if you decided as a special use permit or something.
What's the significance of, if we're playing with words here and terminology, of R1, R2 duplex, quad houses, townhomes. What's the significance of the tax implications for the city of Dickinson?
Tax is based upon the assessed value of that and the land that you have for it. You know, you have different houses that we have. I mean, a duplex, in essence, is 2 dwelling units on one property. Traditionally, people, when you drive around, you see, because you don't see property lines, very few duplexes do we have. We have what we call zero lot line, that I call it zero lot line, or attached single-family housing, where in essence the side property line goes through the center wall of the 2 houses. It's a 2-hour firewall between the 2, and the center line goes through that. But when you drive by it, it's a duplex. Sure. But it's really a single family. It's attached single family. So because the property owner to the east or to one side or the other has the yard and has all the improvements with that. And you get into quads and the rest, it's, you know, 3 on a particular property or 4 on a particular property. That's how we define it in the zoning. Building codes has different issues, but basically what you assess the land is the cost of the land plus the improvements that are there.
But the tax thing is simply valuation.
Yes.
I mean, you might have something on a 50-foot lot that's worth $100,000 more than something on a 100-foot lot. You know?
Right. And they're regulated by the state on how they do their taxing.
To answer your question about 50-foot lots, you know, I'm open to it, but I think we should really be cautious with it. I think we should be limited. My gut tells me that 10 years from now, this isn't going to be the problem it is today. And
Well, that's.
But I'm open to some of it.
Yeah, I mean, I agree, and you know, we could bring forth a project and to say, okay, you're open to the idea, but there's no guarantee which way you will vote, and I could work with the people as best I can. Or if I have a project that is requesting that, I could have them come in front of you and just generally talk. You can't give a recommendation, you can't really give a lot, but at least you could throw in some general ideas, and they can maybe, as a side note or, you know, for a
Ed, what
particular
about,
meeting.
and I've never been involved in a project like this, maybe John has, but I think they're called conservation projects or conservation, you know, where you really are pushing things into a very dense situation, but then you got a lot of open space around it. That's got to make infrastructure cheaper.
Yes, yes.
In the long run.
Absolutely.
You know, you don't save costs on land because the overall density is still the same, but your infrastructure is bunched up.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm very much in favor of it, and thus far.
That to me is very interesting.
Yes.
Very
I have proposed that, and I really haven't had a project come forward. The closest one is probably, and you really wouldn't call it that way, would have been the Creekside one on the east side of town, where they had the wetlands and they were trying to stay outside of it, and so they tried to get a higher density with respect to it. Normally you have those when you're in environmentally sensitive areas, either peaks or, you know, landmarks or wetlands, and you're trying to avoid that. And I'm very much in favor of that. I think as a developer, if the market's there, that's great, because your economies of scale. You may only have to have 2 roads instead of 4. The lots are smaller. It makes it a lot easier to develop, but you also got to have a market for that as well. Not everybody wants to have smaller lots. They want to have their big backyard for their Great Dane to run back in backyard.
Well, they will have their big backyard, though. They just won't own it.
No. Well, that makes it easier. Then you don't pick up after your Great Dane.
But it takes a well-functioning HOA. And
it sounds like it's a PUD, like you know, like the quality issue is something you address in the PUD or conservation easement. But what about, like, if you went to an alternate R1, so like a denser R1, you would still have the same kind of standards. You would, but you need to approve it because it would be new zoning. You could approve it on a case-by-case basis still, and it would be like an R1, say 5,000 or whatever the smaller lot would be. And it seemed like it would address the quality issue because it wouldn't, you know, be standard city improvements.
There's various ways to do it, you know, and I guess what comfortability, probably the first way would be the best would be a PUD, because you can condition, you have broad ability to do that. Then we could come in with a specific ordinance when you feel comfortable with that. or we can get all the criteria involved and come in with an amendment and call R1, call it residential 6,000 or 5,500, and that's your minimum lot size for it, but you have additional criteria to meet in order to accommodate development on it. Various ways to do that.
I know I'm digressing here, but, I expect we're creating a lot of HOAs these days.
Yes, we are.
And our experience in Dickinson hasn't been very good with well-functioning HOAs. And they function really well in other places, really well. I don't know if it's where property values are higher yet or what it is, but they don't. I wonder if, as a city, if we don't need to somehow have the ability to, have some jurisdiction over the operation of HOAs somehow. So we've got all these detention ponds, for instance, and we're counting on HOAs to maintain them, make them look right and everything. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen.
I'll say, most people in this city, right, when they even hear of an HOA, they're like against it instantly.
Well, it's kind of a joke.
Yeah, it is here. I mean, I'm in an HOA out in Idaho, and you have to pay for a significant amount for an HOA to function. Otherwise, you're not going to be paid $20 a month to be an HOA, and you're not going to get anybody to pick up.
But there must be a way, Earl, for that community
Yeah.
that you're in,
Yeah.
so when they have a renegade HOA, that the city or county or whoever can step in and say, get your act together somehow.
And it functions. I'm very lucky. It functions very well. I'm not there hardly, hardly in at all. But
You're
it's
counting on people to volunteer their time.
Yeah.
But
To
the-
meet, I mean, they don't work. They don't work around here anyway.
But they
Well-
work really well other places. Really, really well.
An HOA can't be a volunteer organization. You have to pay enough so you hire those things that are supposed to be done in your HOA to be done for you. Because, if I wanted to volunteer on my HOA, forget it.
You get into
I'm
the
not
s-
going to do it.
You get into the Sun Belt, and it's
Yeah.
the standard way of doing things.
Yeah.
So there's an HOA management company, is what you're saying?
Yep, they take care of it. I mean, you pay your fees, and it's taken care of.
We're going to have problems. They're going to slowly surface, and a few years from now, we're going to have a bunch of blighty stuff.
We're waiting for you engineers to come up with a way for no retention ponds, like we used to have.
Well, and I think we need to move towards a different policy there, too. I really do.
Well, I think it's the same reason why the city struggles maintaining what we have. It's hiring that person to be your lawn care guy, your trash collector. Sure. It's a difficult position to fill for the city, and it would be a difficult position to fill for an HOA affordably right now.
But there have been times when it hasn't been difficult, and it still doesn't work. For whatever reason, I just, I haven't figured that out yet, but.
Yeah. I don't know, maybe there's someone that needs to get an HOA organization of get all the HOAs together, and they have to figure out that you've got a responsibility here.
There's ways to address that. I mean, it's just coming down to addressing it. Jurisdiction that I was at, we had the same problem. When the economy went south, all the developers went bankrupt. The HOAs weren't funded. They were silting up, causing drainage problems. The commission finally said it's a life safety issue and wrote every HOA, every property owner, and said, if you don't take care of the issue, we will hire contractors to do it. You'll be assessed to do that. So it's better for you to take care of the issue. Otherwise, you're going to get assessed from a private company to do that, and we'll put it on your taxes. But that's the enforcement side.
That's where we have to head.
Absolutely.
We had a recent DA that I think you wrote, that if certain private infrastructure wasn't taken care of, the city would have the ability to go in, give notice, do the work, and basically assess. I don't think that word was used, but basically assess the costs. Is there any reason we couldn't do that with HOA-owned facilities, be they detention ponds, or parks, or bikeways, or I don't care what they are?
No, I don't think there's any reason that we couldn't do that. Whatever property is owned by the HOA, that's still a private owner. It's a private entity that owns that property, and they can be assessed, they pay taxes, they do everything else on that property, whether it's a detention pond or whatever else. So you could assess the cost of that. The city bears that cost up front then, and, taxes that as a property tax. I think one of the issues that we have run into already, especially with respect to detention ponds, is that if you assess a cost or a tax to that detention pond or the track that the detention pond sits on, well, the owner doesn't really want it either. So they'll be more than happy not to pay taxes on it and just let it go back to the city. So you do have that issue as well.
Well, the issue to address that is you have to come in and you just say, the detention facility is for your subdivision. Every single property owner is going to be equally divided that share. And you come in and you say, you're going to fix it? Otherwise, we will do that as a city, and we will come in and assess every single party of that. And if you don't pay it, put a lien on your property, and you go from there. It's tough, but that's how you address the issue.
As a city authority, that's easy. As an HOA, it's not. So if you got 500 houses in a subdivision, and pretty soon 80 of them are not paying anymore, then the HOA's got to sue them, and they got to file liens, and, it's a whole legal battle. For the city, you don't pay, we'll just tack it onto
See,
your
in
bill.
Phoenix, they lose their key to the exercise house and the pool room,
Oh, boy.
So, it's a different deal.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. Here, I mean, who's going to sit on that
Somebody out there.
HOA to enforce somebody? Nobody wants to. That's the problem. I've been in I'm still in several condo associations. When it comes to electing people to serve on a condo association, nobody wants to. You have to beg them to do it. And then they don't want to have meetings. And if you have a meeting,
Earl, the next time you go to Idaho, find out why that one works.
City enforcement.
I will, and it's worked very well, I think. I'm really happy with it. It's like it's a good deal. It's a good deal for that development, because we are 4 miles out of town. It's a gated community, and it works well.
What's the average age of the people that are there? I think that makes a huge difference.
In mine, I would say they're probably my age or 10 years younger or something like that, They're almost, most of
90?
them are.
What's that?
So 90.
I just think that's a whole different ballgame. I think that's why places like that work.
Most of them are working on their second careers.
I think it has something to do with what the HOA is offering, too. Either
Sure.
services or facilities or something, that it's more valuable.
That's the other thing.
It does, there has to be some
You're getting assessed
value.
every year $50 or $100 just to keep that ditch mowed.
Yeah, that's-
People are like, what is that really doing for me? I really don't care.
Exactly.
Yeah, there has.
We've got, what's that one just east of Washington 4th? That's got the HOA that's never functioned. It's probably in lawsuits right now from the thing I've heard. Because it's never was set up correctly and it's not functioning and it looks like crap over there now.
One thing that I would look at would be when things solidify, the interim basis is always growing pains, would be, the city could look at in the future, whenever the market starts to drop and people are here and you could fill positions like maintenance and mowing and other ones that I find extremely difficult for us to do, is that the city could just go over and say, okay, instead of the HOA assessing everybody to maintain it, the city will take care of it. We will have a staff to do that. We will mow it and we will assess you like an HOA. And then we know it'll be taken care of. But those assessments have to ultimately pay for staff and equipment in order to do that. And that's what bigger communities end up doing, is that the city takes that over and it's funded by a position. In today's environment, we can't do it. I can't hire enough people just to maintain the city's ones, let alone to take over these other ones. That is a way to address it when things start to slow down. And it's just taken care of like an HOA. But the city's responsible for doing it. And the initial improvements and whatever, let's say if it's silted up, would be bore by everybody within the association, would have to pay that cost to bring it up to that standard, and then the city would take over it at that point. That obviously has to be approved and so forth, but that makes sense to do it that way. The other way is to have regional ponds that we have talked about, and unfortunately, that was not something that the city did during years past, and we're not at that point at this point. We're looking at it.
We need to get there.
We need to get there to regional
Get
ones. So
HDR done.
absolutely, so that we could address, so that it's not confined in a development, you go off to a regional facility. But until that time, the only avenue that we have is the HOA. Or we just don't allow any
city
development.
just
I mean, and that's not an alternative.
Or the city, just take it and accept responsibility.
Yeah, but right now, we can't hire people to do it. Unless we want to pay people an enormous, a significantly higher wage to do that, and then the property owners will have to pay a lot more.
I'm not sure that should have anything to do with it, eh? But anyway, you know, we probably got to go here, but Ed and Earl, as we go through the sub-area plan these next few months, I assume planning and zoning is going to be pretty involved. I hope we can take those times as an opportunity to refresh, this board, to refresh itself just on some basic community planning concepts, you know, just land use planning and you know, our shepherding of land use, strip development, some of those things that can get really ugly. I hope this next few months we can just get ourselves grounded again on some of that.
I'd like to put it on the agenda for this workshop item, if we have a workshop next month. The map behind you, well, it's a zoning map, but on the ETZ, there's some areas that are probably in need of an update. So we've been working on that as city staff and would like to bring that forward to Planning Commission next month. Just to look at it, we have areas in town where our potentially 2-mile ETZ is touching our corporate limits, and so we want to get that cleaned up and refreshed. We haven't renewed that or updated the ETZ limits for a while now, and I'm not sure on the exact date, but so do you have any?
We really need to do that, and all through this sign conversation of the last few months, I've been thinking about ETZ, because what you're going to see now is, in some cases, the sign companies jumping outside of our ETZ, where we don't have jurisdiction.
And the county is, like, I think they're ignoring the county, but the county doesn't want.
Well, the counties may be more restrictive than us.
Oh, they
may
want to
outright prohibit it.
My opinion is,
So the
yeah, I
issue would
think
be
it might
resolved
be.
then.
They've been prohibited. Now, what happens in that case when we get the county has, say, they're more prohibitive in signs, and then we all of a sudden extend our urban boundary and our ETZ? Is it the prior government body that takes over on that, Mr. Coley? What happens, Matt?
I was informed that we would not be discussing signs at this meeting, so.
Come on, man, you know you enjoy that.
You know, Steve has kind of been our contact person as a go-between between the city and the county, which has been very valuable. And I think we'll just have to continue to coordinate with them with respect to signs that we permit and they permit. We already have to do some of that with respect to the ETZ, since they issue building permits within that area, and a sign needs a building permit, but we do the sign permit and the county does the building permits. So there's some of that coordination going on already with respect to the rest of the county. I'll probably let Steve.
Right,
comment.
the commissioners were waiting, the county commissioners were waiting to see what final action the city took before they went ahead and amended the sign portion of their zoning ordinance. So something will probably not for this zoning, planning and zoning board meeting, but the next one, there'll probably be something going forward.
Well, thank you.
Have a good weekend.
Have a good weekend. Yeah, great date. Teasing me this morning. We had the circle of life. We had Jesus. We had God opening the door.
Yeah.
It was like we were blessed. Yeah. I'm not so sure I like the idea of that frickin' beacon going up 9 stories. Oh, we can see this beacon from what a place.